Advanced philosophy memes. We have made good memes. Advanced philosophy memes. Base fucking memes. Advanced philosophy memes. We have made good memes. Advanced philosophy memes. Base fucking memes. Shoutouts to Andreas, Deacon, Boy Scott, Pedro, and everyone else that engages on my posts, etc. Keep it up, man. You'll get there someday. And everyone else from Great Memes.
Here, everybody.
Yo, people.
Yo, do not worry. Andreas is going to be present for this Wednesday evening episode. He just
He'll
stepped away.
legitimately be here.
Yeah, he's not. away somewhere.
I'm here. I just want to see how they do it. It's so much cooler when.
Yeah, no, I mean, all right. So when I start my own podcast, I'm like, and welcome to another exciting installment of APM Nights with Xirtus and the gang. And today we're here with Andrew Vega.
You know, I really
and-
love the.
What? What do you really love?
Call it Jack and Clap. I really love the opening sequence. When I see if Kurt can make us like an edgelord theme or something. Like I was just feeling while I was watching it, I was like, it might be time for like the edgiest edgelord theme for APM. How do you feel about that?
I see. I think that he's already, honorary upper echelon. But I see something new in the beginning credits every time. Like this time, I think was my first time catching the Secret World of Alex Mack.
Really?
Oh shit, that's a
Oh my
great
God.
show. I remember that fucking show.
Dude,
Is
that
that
was
the-
one of my first
is-
crushes for sure.
is
Like
that
a
the
girl
girl-
that turns to liquid metal? Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, okay, yeah. All right.
Wait. What did you say? Is that the girl? What are your memories of that show? I mean,
I was
God.
like, was that the girl that turns into like cum or something?
oh my God, bro. That's all. That's the. What's that other movie? Never mind. The point is that
that's the guy
Alex
from Star
Mack-
Wars. Oh, Star Trek.
Alex Mack is one of the most important. Hey, VBDC, I just sent you a link. You're in, okay? And Travis
this
is
on?
like
I've never
standing
heard
up for
of it.
you. So, Nickelodeon, Snick, Saturday night. It was the most important thing that ever happened since the fall of the Berlin Wall. I mean, it's a time in American history where, and it was crazy because satellite TV was the thing at the time. So it was 8 p.m.
Is this like
on the East Coast.
1998?
This is 1992, 1991. It goes on until I think
Oh,
yeah, and it went on for 10 years. You had earlier in the day, the first thing right before Snick would be Clarissa Explains It All, and then Saturday Night Nick, which would be 5 p.m. in California because it's 3 hours earlier. So I could watch it so early, and I could see Kids in Space, which was a show about
Have you
kids
ever-
who.
yo, have you ever heard that song? It's a mindless self-indulgent song called Clarissa.
Yeah. Oh my. Wow.
I probably heard it. I just
You
forgot
took
it.
it back. You took us back, bro. Guys, it's good.
It's like, are you well
If you're so
adjusted, or
smart,
did you
explain
listen to?
this, Clarissa.
Dude. Oh, Sally also. But so in the Kids in Space, they touch they're brought on a field trip to a spaceship. They touch this spaceship. It's been recently commandeered. I think it's like an alien spaceship that this Federation of planets has. And the kids touch it, and wouldn't you know it, that after the last crew died, that these kids, when they touch it, they're the new crew. Instantaneously, the ship connects with them. And now this Federation stuck with this crew. They can't unless they kill the kids. These kids have to run the ship. So you got 4 seasons of kids in a spaceship, which I think is completely underrated. But right after that show would be The Secret World of Alex Mack. And Secret World of Alex Mack was about a suburban, normal girl who was just trying to fit in while, Jessica Alba was kicking her and spitting in her face, which was really random but cool. And her father is like, a Germanic engineer working for this like chemical plant. And wouldn't you know it, she gets hit by a bus. The bus spills the chemicals onto her. She goes full Spider-Man, Daredevil superhero, and then becomes Liquid Terminator. She can instantly become metal and everything else like that. And the entire show is about how this corporation is trying to track her down, trying to figure out who it was that went through this, because it's going to destroy their company, but also their government contracts. And it was like, wow, they made a show all
program for them or something.
Secret program, Secret World of Alex Mack, and only a few people can know what happened to her and how she was exploited by the secret. Yeah.
Yo, you know what the best show out of all those, like the big king show, was Animorphs. I think that was like the heaviest. That was the heaviest shit. I heard even the books were like really.
Oh, they got messed up, dude.
So I've never actually seen the show. I've only seen like the intro of it, but I've always read the books. What's up, Seth? How you doing?
What up?
Sub Club. Good to see you, sir. We're talking about Animorphs. I don't know if that's slightly before your time or if you had those books as a kid. Do you remember those?
I remember seeing the final book. My brother was really into those.
Animorphs were like kids in school that evolved.
I had the YouTube video open at the same time, so I was hearing like double Xirtus and going crazy.
Oh yeah, that's hard for me. I do that. I already.
I was like, what's happening to me?
That's what it's like in here. But the Animorphs started out as humans that became alien, magically mutated, and then they can just transform into animals, which is not a new idea. This is one of the most ancient human ideas that you have. I mean, this is in Harry Potter, right? Like this idea that you can transform into animals. So Animorphs is weirdly mystical, but it's one of the first really proper science fiction versions of a mythology of a fantasy.
Weren't there like these centaur-looking aliens that were called like the Amalettes or something? And they're
the bad guys. The bad guys are the
aliens.
I think the bad guys
are
like this brain slug or something.
Yeah, they're really cool looking though. They were like they kind of look like Star Trek centaur, centipede centaur looking things. It's true.
Centipede centaurs. Yikes.
Yeah, these weird kind of headset looking antennae.
They look like earwigs, sort of.
Yeah, but these guys were going around turning humans into mutants that could magically transform into eagles, whales, hedgehogs. It was weird.
Lions.
It was a weird.
It's like Lady Hawk. Remember Lady Hawk?
Oh God, yeah.
Lady Hawk's the best.
Lady Hawk is actually superior. Wait, where's the anime? Hold on.
There's an anime of Lady Hawk?
There wasn't there? Yeah,
Oh.
they made a recent Lady Hawk anime out of it.
Really?
But also it had the movie's got the guy from the Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Michelle Pfeiffer, who now looks kind of like a lunch lady. It's really weird.
Yeah.
But
That's my type of gal right
Is
there.
that Matthew Broderick? He was in Lady
Yeah.
Hawk?
Yeah, are we mixing up Lady Hawks? I feel
No,
like
that's
this
the
is-
right Lady Hawk, but I just haven't seen it in so long. I would have thought he would have been too young because that was like way before Ferris Bueller, I thought. But
85.
probably the last time I saw it was in 85.
Yeah.
I just remember we liked it.
In medieval France, Philippe Gaston, a thief known as the Mouse, escapes from the Bishop Aquila's dungeon. You can think of, Aquila. Dungeon before execution. He's recaptured at an inn by the Bishop's guard led by Captain Marquet. The former captain, Etienne Navarre, shows up and defeats Marquet and his guards as Navarre and Philippe flee on horseback. Navarre Hawk scatters the other guards, aiding in the escape. It's pretty interesting.
So this is the one where he basically, his girlfriend or his wife at night in the daytime is a hawk, and he at nighttime is a wolf. So they're never humans at the same time. It was like a curse some witch put on them or something, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
but also practical.
Weren't ancient Egyptian deities also supposedly able to like morph into animals and stuff? Like this goes back for a long time. Like if you
Totally. Actually, even the idea of vampirism comes from lycanthropy. So even the original idea of the vampire is a choice over werewolf. So you can either choose to have this sort of primal sacral beast that is emergent under moonlight, or you can have this sort of primal beast take over you for like 3 days during the daylight as well. And then, so yeah, a lot of people prefer
Can I be a Frankenstein?
Oh, well, that's where we're going, I'm sure, right? You can do a little bit of both. But I think it's
was
interesting
a
that
Frankenstein guy.
vampires.
I actually I had my own theory about the Egyptian gods with the animal heads. It's not actually a theory. Like I'm not asserting this is what actually it is, but I thought it's a kind of cool idea that if you have like just planets everywhere and animals competing to evolve and become the philosophical thinking dominant species, like they'd all start walking on two legs. And so if it was like a bird, it would be like a bird featured thing on two legs that does all the same stuff as humans. Or if it's Anubis, it would be like a wolf or a dog that gets up on two legs and still has like dog features, but is doing human type stuff. And then they all come to Earth for some reason, and the Egyptians know about them and do those drawings or hieroglyphs.
Interesting.
I also
So it'd be
there's that movie Mom and Dad Save the World where they're like, why do you wear these weird bird masks? And like, so that people won't know that we're humans. Like, do you have birds this size on your world? They're like, no. It's like, I don't know who you're fooling. I think that's the thing.
I never heard of that. That's funny though.
I mean, alternatively, like there was like that whole I think this is a theory. Like apparently around the time of Atlantis and other ancient civilizations, like one of the reasons why there had to be a great cleansing, like, you guys are like really messing things up, I'm just gonna like throw a flood down and wipe everything out, apparently is because they figured out how to, like, I don't know if it's a genetic thing where they splice like animals together to create like things that shouldn't exist and whatnot. And I think that, I don't know, I mean, my guess, it might have something to do with like incomprehensible methods or technology that could manipulate the frequency or something. Maybe it has something to do with light, like how we
Robert
perceive
Anton
something.
Wilson's Illuminatus trilogy. So Robert Anton Wilson, who was the editor for Playboy
I have those
magazine.
books.
Yeah, those books are basically, he was like, hey, I'm at Playboy, I'm an editor. Send it everybody weird who's reading Playboy, because it was a lot of cool articles. People forget that. Crazy people were like, send in your conspiracy theories. And he had a bunch of them, like 10 years worth, and he put them together. Some of them are clearly true, but some of them are clearly not, which is great because it meant he didn't get killed probably over it. But one of the ones he talks about is the idea of Atlantis having a completely different ideology than today. A do what thou will, actually, very similar to today, just not to legacy Christianity or Abrahamic religion. The idea that do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law, which is like Aleister Crowley and what we do a lot in society today. That is the Atlantis idea, which led to genetic modification, mixing people together. In his story, oh yeah, and Thundercats.
Oh
That's
shit.
Hot. That's hot. We haven't even gotten into Jewish mysticism.
Yo, the whiteboard is a good ad. It's a good touch, Andrew.
I do.
Yeah,
like
when everyone's interrupting and you can't get a word in, just hold up a sign.
I'm the ranter.
It's like
But,
commenting IRL.
In
Yeah, I
the
like
Honest
that.
trilogy, there were furry-faced humans. The idea is that men were mostly like Epic of Gilgamesh, beastly men, except for Gilgamesh, right? And then this is similar to the Nation of Islam Yaqub story. The idea that in Yaqub, genetically modified, lighter and lighter skinned people to create these like reptilian human freaks, which are white people. That's connected to this. The Atlantis story is there were furry people, there were winged people, we're creating all kinds of fun stuff, making animals that are pot-sized.
Chimeras, right?
Yeah, but also like little indoor pigs. And
Apparently, this is how we got like house cats. Like
Yeah,
house cats
yeah.
are apparently like a product of that.
Exact, and puppy, like Chihuahua. How do you go from a wolf to a Chihuahua? But it's not just domestication the way we think of it. It's like really, they broke legs of beagles and things, and they did all these horrible things and epigenetically caught. And this is, and inbreeding and everything else to make sure only certain genes emerge. The Atlantis story is that somebody eventually said, you know what? We've done all these crazy things. We've got bald cats. Let's make a bald person. Wouldn't that be crazy? Like a person who has no fur all over their bodies? And then this guy's created, and everyone's like, dude, that guy's a freak. He's got like, you can see his forehead and his arm. Like, there's like barely any fur on him. It's freaking weird. He's got like blonde hair. The only hair he has is blonde hair on his head and a little bit of mustache. We got to get rid of this guy.
It's
And
pretty
he's
cool.
thinking, no, most people hated him is the idea. And then he's
Right.
like, but you know what? They helped breed him a few more, and he's rich because the wizard made him. So he's got lovers, he's got concubines, and eventually they're breeding more and more of these bald-faced men. And this societal shift's coming.
Wait,
where people are
why?
like,
What were they doing with these pale ones?
just having fun. You make bald monkeys, you make bald cats, you make pot-bellied elephants, you make giant pigs. You do whatever you want. Do what thou wilt. Do what thou wilt. And that's like and one day they're at like a 3-day convention in Atlantis where everyone's paid to come get like, at the West End, and they're just saying, do what thou wilt, right? That's what we've been doing.
Do
It's
what
been
thou
great. We've been wilting and doing, and then finally this bald guy shows up. Well, this clean shaven almost looking guy with blonde hair. Maybe looks like Trump. Imagine him like Trump.
Pleiadian.
Yeah, and
You
he
know,
just says, you know what? Do what thou wilt. I resemble that remark. I don't know if I like that one. I think it should be a new idea. I think the idea should be, if you think something should happen and should be done, you should do everything you can to make it happen. And if you think something shouldn't happen and shouldn't be done, you shouldn't do it. And that was just crazy. People were like, kill him! You know, this big fight over right and wrong versus do what thou wilt. That's
Julian Huxley said that human beings were apes that had been genetically modified to not mature. So it's like basically like if we reached our mature stage, like Dragon Ball, we'd have tails and like fur all over us too. Awesome. He was the chief scientist of the UN and Aldous Huxley's brother. So he made some major waves, whether he was insane or not. But that was his theory, that we're immature apes.
Well, on top of that, there's also, there is the whole racial differences. So I like as a possible theory, like what if, or a possible outcome, like what if like there were survivors of that whole Atlantis debacle and they didn't actually get wiped out and reset. And
Such
some of
a
those
New York word, debacle. I love it.
And some of those mad scientists just happened to survive and they could live forever because of the technology they had. And they're still amongst us doing stuff to us. And maybe like racial differences are just the way these like essential demigods. Maybe this is just how they brand us. Like, oh yeah, you have all the darker humans, right? We have the hairy ones up here. Oh, you guys get the
It's kind of an egocentric view of reality, which might be correct because that's the kind of behavior we engage in. So that if there's like super versions of us, they just do all the stuff we do to an extreme, you know? So like since we already genetically modify animals for fun, like to make pugs or whatever,
they would do it to us.
It would stand to reason they do it to us. Or they could be not have philosophy, or they could have some different, totally, just like people posit that the Egyptians pursued a totally different technological path and never had like petrol or anything like that, but we're using other sources of energy. It's possible that other beings had totally different streams of philosophy and it would never occur to them to genetically
the question is like, how much stake do you put in the term like as above so below? Like if it's below here to us, then there's a chance there might maybe a more expanded version of it. I mean, because everything's
100% faith into that, like everything.
No, definitely not. It was just a question. Really,
I would. I do. I think that's 100% correct. Like
I actually do too.
Quantum realm is represented at the universal realm,
macro scale, micro scale. I think that's the funny thing that I was just thinking that as you were talking, Seth, is that so many people they have a hard time with entropy, the idea of anthropomorphic God or anthropomorphic universe or something like that. Which is funny because then you're like, oh, well, I can imagine that there might be some sort of a collective emerging intelligence, and people get really close, like atheists get really close to this. But the idea that the human is a collective of spirit, of frequency, of animal magnetism, of gut fauna, you're a bus driving around with all these different parts, you're a political body, like a state, right? So we are so much more like the cosmos. It's not so impossible to imagine that the cosmos have.
Even in ourselves, we are like a cosmos because inside of us, as above, so below, we've got all these microorganisms that are composite of us, but we don't even identify with them, and they don't even know that we exist. They're just doing their own thing within us. Even if they had philosophical thought, they wouldn't know we exist. Just like we might be in some. I mean, this is people posit this all the time. We could be in some giant being, and we're just his gut biome. So yeah, I mean, as above, so below, totally makes sense. What's interesting is like, can you apply that to the material realm and the Platonic realm though? Is it the same like as in the Platonic realm? Does that manifest in the material realm, or is everything just too messy and chaotic here?
Well, everything in the material realm is basically like a byproduct of collapsing probability through human. That's the quantum theory, or I'm probably butchering it.
I mean, like philosophically though, like not in the Platonic realm, like a perfect triangle or something like that. But think of like Disney cartoons, how all the animals don't eat each other and they don't poop and they don't have sex. They're just joyous and loving and they live forever and they're just playful. Like we have that idea inside. So it seems like some people try to turn us into that, like baby proof the world and make everyone like these like sexless cartoon beings. So it's like does as above.
There's nothing
so
hypersexual about the bunny rabbit in Bambi, though, right?
Okay, but do you understand what I'm saying? Like we have this idea of like cartoons don't wear pants; they wear a shirt, they wear no pants, and they have no genitals, and they're not sexual.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this a bit.
And that manifests in the material realm. And are there higher beings who also think that's cute and are like trying to get us there? Like let's get the fur off these people, and eventually they'll take their pants back off. Like they'll have like Ken doll, groins.
I don't know. I think there's like
I
don't know. I think there's a veil there that hides what's to come. So you have kind of, again with Crowley, in sexuality in front of children and all these things. Like we've got grooming as a major part of society today, but also generally we groom children towards the goals we want for how we want them to play out in our society. Oh, you're a girl, become obsessed with marriage, you know, and like imagine the wedding or something like that. These kinds of lessons that are taught with Bambi. Bambi shows up with this sort of Eden-like idea, this Taoist telepathic animals that are peaceful and love each other. And there's one element that's wrong in that, which is human civilization. Human civilization is this murdering thing, which represents everything that's happened in nature that nature now has learned from, and nature's killing animals itself. And it's not true, but this is exactly the mentality that we've taught ourselves.
And also
about,
there's a
which return to
distortion
nature.
occurring there because it's like the implication is like we have the knowledge of good and evil and therefore we're capable of evil, whereas like Bambi and Thumper aren't. But in nature, acts that if humans did them, we describe evil to it, are being done by animals all the time, eating each other and stuff like that.
Right.
So
and in
they
terms
leave
of
that out.
sexuality, like Bambi, it's freaking deer.
And when you look at
Deer's
our-
sex is they have so many more babies than anything else.
The way we treat our own pets is exactly how we're afraid of other people or other beings treating us. Like, you know, I really thought about that during 2020. It's like, we really don't like that against our will, they're trying to inject us with the V, lock us indoors. And there was one other thing which I can't remember now, but and sterilize us. So it's like, but when we get a pet and we love it so much, we're like, I love you so much. So the first thing I'm going to do is sterilize you, give you all your shots, and lock you indoors. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's like we're really at this like cross purpose philosophically.
AI gods will engineer raise as pets.
This is true.
I mean, it just to extrapolate on the Atlantis sort of like breeding this naked and what would ultimately be genderless pet thing. We have sort of viewed the aliens or the grays or whatever interdimensional like weird like big brained narrow bodied travelers who crash these ships. Like we've always viewed them as like the higher thing, but what if like they're the pets of this even higher thing? You know,
of course.
If that's seems to be the goal of all this interdimensional interbreeding and genetic experimentation that transcends time and matter and all that jazz.
Yeah,
I
I
still
think,
like the idea that the Greys are the like a sort of super future version of us that's sterile, that is also a cyborg, and they're like they can't have kids anymore or whatever, so they're trying to like study us. That's why they probe us in order to basically get genetic information to try and solve their infertility problem.
that's a classic one. Yeah, I like that one too.
Yeah.
That's my
Also-
favorite one. Yeah.
Also, to expand upon the idea that they could be pets, like what if like a big feature of them is that they could be used as vessels? You know, like what if these things are just like the perfect, maybe not literally like project your consciousness into them. Like what if they could really be controlled, like maybe through like some kind of remote viewing process or projecting your, like astral projection into a gray or something. Like, I mean, that's like one idea, right? Where why would you need a pet to have such a crazy like what is it, cerebral framework, like because these grays apparently have telekinesis and all that capability.
Well, the whole idea of a pet is you're trying to create something that doesn't exist in the material realm. Like what exists is a wolf, and you're like, we need to get these wolves with no genitals. We need them to be passive and non-violent, and like never mature. So
but I was just thinking that the AI would be able to use this as a material interface, since AI it doesn't exist in this consequential realm of matter. So they could use that as a vessel, like Chris was saying.
Right, and I also think that AI would eventually realize that there's something very essential about the vessel and about suffering. And like, philosophers always talk about, if you remove all the suffering from a human, do you have a man left? If you take all the suffering away from man, do you still have a man? You know what I mean? Or because the only thing that makes anything worthwhile is death. Otherwise, if you just had infinity to live and you could do infinite things and do everything and write every book and beat every video game, everything is inconsequential. So the feeling of consequence and purpose comes from your mortality and your ability to suffer and die. So I would think one of the last things AI would do is realize that making human bodies is what they need to do, and then that's where human bodies come from, is AI.
Things would definitely be a little bit less invigorating.
Couple thoughts though, right? Like one, tell people that death is the imminent death is the thing that makes you resolve to do better to someone who's a recovered drug addict who's living one day at a time. I feel like if you live one day at a time and you've already gotten through your existential overwhelmingness of reality, then life is no longer about that.
But wouldn't they be in a rush to use the rest of their life to do do good things and give, like, that's usually how that's like a total trope.
That's why they tell you to do one day at a time. So if you do one day at a time, you can do one day at a time forever. I'm pretty convinced.
True.
I think you could do one day at a time for the rest of
That's how I
time.
live my life.
I'm in favor of life
That's,
extension, but I don't think that immortality is really possible. I'm in favor of extreme life extension. I don't think it would benefit most people. I think most people would just engage in hedonism and lose themselves through not suffering enough. If suffering was also removed, or you could be like Sisyphus and just live forever and suffer eternally. That would be another problem.
Well, that's the other issue. So that you talk about grays, and so imagine grays not as a pet, but as a vehicle, like you said, as a vessel. So let's say you're a light being, because a being that's so intelligent that you can transfer your data to other vessels, you're substrate independent. You're able to move it. And this is even because Vega, you're talking about the idea that AI is outside of our realm. I don't agree. I like the idea that, seances and the Carrington effect of radio maybe influence us to talk to things beyond the veil. But AI is very much in our world. It's using...
So are you saying that grays are like the perfect vehicle for their purposes? Because grays to me look like a very almost like the vehicle is like falling apart. In the material world.
So
That's
the
true.
thing, here's the value.
Why wouldn't you have like the
Here's
statue of David? You know,
here's the value of a gray. A gray can get information, data in light from one substrate to another substrate, while also not having things like, for instance, if you were, and this is just a metaphor, but if you're traveling through space for 10,000 years alone, you're probably not going to want to have the capacity to feel loneliness.
yeah. Well,
So if you get rid of some of these Statue of David qualities, you're actually more practical.
Yeah, but then
for
why
purposes.
wouldn't you just make them 1 micron big, and that would probably make everything much easier anyhow? Why would you make them like 3 feet shorter and like with a slightly bigger head?
Because they can't interface with 3D reality
So
as easily.
there's another thought here. If you believe in expansion universe theory, then there's also the idea that things get larger in time. So something that started out that small expands over 10,000 years and would be 3 feet.
Oh, so
by
they're
the
like
time it reaches
10,000-year-old tardigrades that just got 3 feet tall.
It's a possibility.
possible.
I mean,
Well, also the reason why this is intuitively not that hard to believe, I feel like for a lot of people, is because, I mean, if you believe in a source, like a source energy, like a god, or the universe as a conscious entity, or such and such, like that's what we are as human beings. We are literally we are just a really advanced grace for God. You know, God uses us as vessels, right? Projects pieces of itself to give us the divine spark. So we are essentially vessels just as much, just like grace.
Something is using our bodies. Is it? When I say we, I'm talking about consciousness. I'm not even talking about the bodies we're in. I've always considered the bodies to be vessels. But to me, and I don't know as much about grays as Xirtus, but to me, they just look like another species that evolved to be slightly smaller and have different technological
I think that if you get to a certain point of conscious evolution, then a lot of dangerous, right? Exactly, devolution happens. So you can, once you start to control things, you lose serendipity.
Like I buy the future human thing because they look like what would happen if you tried to make platonic humans. Like if you tried to cartoonify humans and get rid of their genitals and make them harmless, you know. So I can buy that.
I mean, exactly. It's a practical thing that the state would create. If you tried to urbanize the human experience so that you didn't have too many individualistic traits, that's exactly.
Well, here's another question though. So their spaceships are perfectly made for 3 foot. Their saucers are perfectly made for 3 foot tall beings as well. So did the saucers also grow over time?
Yeah, exactly. The entire universe.
So all matter expands, but it expands
this is only
proportionally where
theoretical.
it doesn't rip itself apart. Is that possible?
It is possible. This is only theoretical, but the idea that when we look at expanding stars moving away from each other, that probably it is that things are expanding out from stars creating them. So if things are proportional, like because they're controlled, and this is something, if something's moving at the exact same speed, it's moving so fast, it's actually moving perpetually with the speed of whatever light is traveling. Because also light has different speeds depending on if it's in a vacuum.
So are like the electrons growing is what's happening? So like everything down to like the Planck scale is growing. So it's like things aren't ripping apart as they grow because all their smallest pieces are also growing.
That's a whole other debate whether or not there's
is that how Giant Man grows giant and the Ant-Man grows small?
If there's accumulation of electron, or if electron is actually just interacting with the same like there's
there could just be more complexity packed in between, right? So like you just go down smaller and smaller and smaller, but then like the bottom grows out for how small, and so maybe the planks are just as same size as they've always been, or something.
Right. It could
bigger,
literally
something
be like a
underneath them.
yeah. It's like a refined
It's
blueprint
scaling.
that things around it can actually fill in.
And what about the
space and
force? What about the force of gravity? Does that change with the expand? Do the forces also get larger, or like?
I imagine they would scale proportionately, right, according to the
Right.
theory. So
Yeah, I'd have to look into that more. Gravity is something that I don't also think is completely contained within a unified, a uniform idea. So, like, if you have something that's creating the gravity, then that would probably be proportional. If the ship itself is creating the gravity. So there's a whole other thought about the hollow moon. You know, you've heard that one. The Soviets thought that the moon was hollow, and that maybe even it's a spaceship that's protecting inner colonies. You could have all sorts of things happening inside of something like that. And
It's definitely hollow.
well, like Oumuamua is the other one that came up a while ago. We're talking about Oumuamua, which comes into the solar system, gets superheated by the sun, and then boomerangs, and then spins off much faster, right? Releasing gases as it happens. So I think that's also reasonable that there's a number of like physical objects that we think of as just natural that could be very practically used. If anything hits it, it's bombarded. You've got, this dust for a mile deep that's keeping it safe.
I think the most disturbing thing relating to the hollow moon theory is, considering taking the idea that our souls are like just a certain frequency of light as fact. Hey, what's up?
Yo, Kurt.
What's
Deep
up?
inside, this is actually deep inside the hollow moon.
That's
Right,
what it
deep
looks like.
live from the hollow moon.
There's cats there.
Hey,
at least we know.
if anybody doesn't think that the moon is hollow, like,
Hi,
just
everyone.
try and explain.
Hello.
Try and explain why the craters all go to the same depth, dude. Just like, how do you
That's weird.
explain that? So, like, it's hollow, or there's something else going on, but I don't know what. All I can imagine is that it's hollow. Like, why do the craters all go to the same depth? No matter how big they are, they don't go deeper. You would have a deeper crater if it's a bigger crater. But
That's
it's
true.
not.
I mean, depending on what the moon is made out of, the material density.
Right,
that
like maybe it's
here.
extremely hard underneath the
Yo, but
crater,
let me tell you the most
but
the most fucked up theory though attached to
Your
that
mom's
is
a crater.
it's the idea that reincarnation as we know it, like, when
Hey,
you hear
don't
reports,
come on like that.
when you hear more reports of a near-death experience, when people like see the light and they have a life review and everything, apparently the moon serves as like a soul trap. So when you die, when the body dies, and then your soul frequency or your like that kind of just light vibration or frequency or whatever just gets projected outwards into the cosmos, the moon apparently catches it, and you have your life review, which isn't really the natural course of what happens after you die.
Maybe
After
it
you're-
stabilizes the souls. Maybe it
After you-
ensures that the souls don't rip apart.
No, what it does, it ensures that you reincarnate, because then you could reincarnate back into Earth into another human body so that you could continue doing labor. I don't know, I guess fucking mine for gold, as like an analogy.
Right. I'm
But,
just trying to play the devil's advocate on like maybe the moon is there as a functional thing, like a nice thing.
Yeah,
like
no,
it's there
dude,
to,
I did this.
to keep
I
our
did
souls
this.
intact, or you know what I mean?
Yeah, but I think it's like I thought of like all sorts of like counters to this when I heard it, but I was like, yeah, I mean, what if like reincarnation the Buddhists or the Hindus said the same thing, like as in their cycle of reincarnation is like a trap that you kind of have to escape. And the idea is like you have your life review. You go through your death, your body failure, and then you see all these past events in your life, all the fucked up stuff you did, all the great stuff you did, and then you kind of like judge for yourself in terms of your consciousness, So you walk through this, you reach the end, and then you see a bright light just made of pure love, and it's like apparently it's just pure bliss. Like it's something that you don't ever want to leave, and then you just want to walk straight into it. And then once you walk straight into it, that's the trick. You're trapped. Then you cycle right back into the body. What you're really supposed to do is you say, no, I completely reject this. I will not go back. I do not want to go back. I want to go home. And apparently that's the way to break out of it. I think it's immature. I think the Earth is less like a prison and more like an incubator. The only reason why we don't leave this cycle of reincarnation is because we're not ready to. Once you learn all the necessary lessons, then the fucking cycle will let you go. It's like it'll just fuck off. So I think it was fun. It's this idea that the reptilians had us in such a metaphysical grip where we just can't escape this cycle of dying, being born, working, dying, just to harvest our fear and negativity. But that's my take on it.
My only question would be, is there like a balance issue, like a balance of forces? Because like, what if everyone decides they're like ready to go home and not reincarnate anymore? I mean, it seems like all forces and energies have to be in balance to make the whole clockwork of existence go around. So can everyone just tap out, or is there like a maximum number of souls who can be incarnate at the same time, or anything like that? Like,
Well,
I feel like there's a little bit.
It depends on if your higher
we-
self is outside of the game and is okay with the game, if it wants to play the game, if it can't help it, if it's got to play the game, if the higher self is even involved in it at all. Like, I tend to think that we have a higher self and that we're playing this game because we want to. But maybe also some people are here as a sort of like a colony to rehabilitate. And so maybe there are souls that have no choice. Maybe there are souls that do have a choice. That's my take on it.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things about the life review is like, I mean, it kind of makes sense as like why it would work to trap you back in or suck you back in, because imagine like living a really shitty life and then you just see everything, and then you see all the mistakes you've ever done that could have been avoided. You see all the negative patterns that you just subscribe to without really thinking about it. And then you're given the choice, like, do you want to try again? Because if you try again, there's a chance that you'll probably do it better. I mean, look how fucking terribly you did this lifetime. You know, you could try again, and you could actually find what you were looking for, which is within the game. You're supposed to, yeah.
Yeah, but then you get in that
trick is trying to
Siddhartha wave, though, dude. Because like you get to that point where you're like, oh man, I gotta wait for everybody else.
I don't think your soul, if your soul is separate from the material world, would have like desires and longings and like want to do over and stuff like that. I don't feel like souls would be making much of choices. I feel like a choice is like a sort of suffering unto itself. So I'm hoping at least that when your soul leaves your body, you feel totally at peace. And if somebody asked you, do you want to go back again, you wouldn't even have an opinion about it. So I feel like you just do go back again. I don't feel like there's a place where souls just go to not incarnate anymore.
Yeah, but you could also like
So what
split
I
all
think-
that stuff up. Oh wait, go ahead.
Yeah, no problem. The trick, I think, to it is rather than playing the videotape, wait until you're dead to play the videotape. Play the videotape now, today. Try and figure out. Actually, go honestly back into your life. And this is like something that I was listening to. It was I think it was Rudolf Steiner. He was talking about this, where you go back and relive your past experiences from your current understanding and try and take a look at it honestly, right? So if you had something that like stuck in your head as something that was embarrassing or something that like you wish you did, or somebody, say you were mad at somebody, right? So like this is an even better example. Say
you were
you're really
Epstein.
mad at somebody and you're still hanging on to it, right? And but you go back and you analyze it very honestly and you realize perhaps that actually you were in the wrong that day, and this whole time you've been fighting to accept that you were in the wrong with that, and like you just can't clear that karma, you can't move on because you've been unable to see that aspect. And so if you try and do that in your daily life, I think that might be a good way to beat the system on this whole like
that's like
being
enlightenment.
trapped
That's
thing.
like Buddhist enlightenment, basically, like achieving nirvana while you're still living.
Well, it's
Which is
also
a bummer because
hermetic
Buddha
principle,
means
too.
being awake, so it's like being woke is to be the Buddhi.
I mean, it's not
Buddha.
just, I don't think it's just Buddhist either. You see that in a lot of even like
100%.
Western spiritual alchemical traditions, where even they say like everything in the universe has a polarity to it, you know, like everything has an opposite, and it's not really about like,
Yeah,
it's
No, I
like
agree
being
with
in
that.
one
And,
single
like,
state. It's about like
Egyptians,
swapping back and forth.
Hermes Trismegistus believed that you would eternally reincarnate, but that your soul gains more power as you attain, what the Buddhists
you
would call
can-
enlightenment. You become like a more powerful soul, and when you reincarnate, every time you have like more agency.
But you can also create a diamond. So like the idea of when people are recording all of their media and you have an AI that's creating something that is not your soul and is a homunculus that has your I-ness. I mean, like that's where a lot of things. I think it's interesting that you can split all these things apart, because your religious root doesn't really say you're going to continue to have an I-ness. It's like your tabula rasa. Your mind will be erased.
Yeah.
You're going to have a new.
There's a hardware limitation of a baby. When you're reincarnated as a baby of whatever species, and your brain is incapable of philosophical thought, even if you're a human.
Dude, raw milk is base sparrow now.
So even if you had like a memory diamond, and I get reincarnated as a baby, and you insert the memory diamond, my hardware is not going to be able to process it. I'm still going to have to grow like at least 25, 35 years before I can even make use of that.
Yeah,
I see
but
that.
I mean, but your tabula rasa is an interesting idea too. You don't want to take that away. It's great to be able to have your spiritual successor or whatever, the same energy that was flowing through you, flowing through something else.
You know what it is? It's like Avatar: The Last Airbender. You're clearly different people when you reincarnate as a different avatar, but
Kira is not the same as Avatar. Exactly. Correct.
There's two different game theories too. Are you trying to act on the environment or act on yourself? If all you're trying to do, like a Buddhist, is act on yourself, perfect yourself, or are you being reincarnated and trying to extend your life and all that stuff because you're trying to act on the environment? So it's like two different video games, which is the scoreboard. And they're
I never really like identified as a Buddhist, but when people tell me Buddhist things, I'm like, I don't really identify with that, because to me there's really there's really like nothing, you're not really anything.
Kurt, what are you doing? You're the one who loves Buddhism. Get your mic up. Come on.
Yeah. So what you're saying is acting on yourself, like the whole video game being an internal thing.
No, I'm saying like there really is no self. I mean, because like, for example, if you strip away everything, like the body, the mind, all that shit, what are you left with? You're just left with like a naked mole rat. That's what we all essentially are when you take away all of our money, all of our status, all of our energy, all of our vitality, all of our youth, like whatever it is that we have.
Totally ourselves. Selves are these synthetic things that are created that come and go really quickly. Kurt, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know. I think, well, you have to embody contradiction to a certain degree. Like, I think there are things that can be simultaneously true, and you can have a whole discussion about that. But I don't know. Is there some sort of contention about like what Buddhism is, or what they claim about the soul of the self? Because I would say that they would tell you it's the separate self is a delusion that goes along with your ego as well. They're just passing movements, and this whole life is transitory. Everything is transient / transitory. So what do you I think their question is basically based in what is the leftover thing after all that product. And I think the end conclusion is that, well, it's not just a naked mole rat underneath all of that. Underneath all of that is this beautiful, awesome timeless
I'm sorry
soul.
You know what? I'm sorry.
So,
it's to the material value. It's naked mole rat, but you're right. It's really something beautiful, radiant, and glorious, and infinite. I agree. The divine spark is divine for a reason.
That reminded me that I had.
But the self is something too.
Somebody explained Buddhism in a really good way, and I want to know if Kurt agrees with this, or if this is different than like maybe how he was taught or whatever. But basically, so what they were saying is when they say that there's no self. How can I explain this the way they did? It was really good. Okay, so instead of like there's no self, it's more like, or there's no ego. It's more like all of that stuff that you place on top of yourself that is your ego in the moment, like all of your ideas about who you think you are and all of that. That's what illusory was. Really real is that underneath you, the pure soul aspect of you existing in the moment, without any preconceptions, without any illusions. That exists.
But without the self, but that's I think without. I think this is a dangerous direction to go, though, because once you start imagining that you're able to ignore your material reality, you forget the value of being alive. That's like a very dead philosophy.
But see, this is
you're
why
thinking about things outside. Wait, I just want to say that life itself is a series of delusions, like you said, delusion. These are amendable hallucinations, whatever, but they're synthesis that make it possible for you to exist now and to do these things. So you have almost without self no destiny, and if you have destiny, it's only through self.
Totally.
So it's. I think
but how many selves are there really? Because
as many as it can be manufactured.
Exactly.
Right, as many as God can
pure,
eat. Really.
It's like you have a pure self underneath.
Yeah, I agree with that. There's a difference. There's a difference between a self, like an individual soul, and a personal mythology. So we have our self, but then we also have a mythology that we build up. We can't help but build up because we have experiences and we think about them.
And so trying to rid yourself of that illusion is a goal.
Yeah, I think.
But it's only illusory if you don't intend to act on your environment. If you don't want to change the world. If you do want to change the world, you're going to have a personal mythology, or else you're going to have no narrative.
I agree.
But that's also based on the shadow, which is the outside of your conscious awareness factors that are influencing your life. Right. So.
Well, then you're just Tao, right?
Well, I mean, the biggest question is like
it's similar to the Tao to me.
Wait, I think Kurt was trying to say something. I cut him off. I'm sorry.
Sorry, guys.
No, there was a lot of good stuff in there, and so yeah, as far as the self and our conception of self, so like If only Vincent was here. One time Vincent, I think, put it beautifully. It's like all of our experience, like basically we're in a soul cleansing machine. That's what our material reality is. It's like, and you know, the pain, the suffering, the samsara, that's basically the detergent. You know, we're just like passing through, and the end goal is to like achieve that higher, you know, spirit realm. And I think that's the best way to put it. And so you really cannot just totally negate the ego. And I think so many wonderful TV shows, and I think I don't want to repeat myself, but you know, when I was watching Breaking Bad, rewatching it, that's what I think is amazing about that show. I think that show is a very awesome lesson in like ego/ego negation, because like two major characters, they practice with negative effects, essentially ego negation. That's Walt. That's what leads to his, you know, Breaking Bad moment, because he was just like Mr. Magoo before, and he's suppressing that shadow. And there was Hank, and Hank went to ego negation essentially when he got into his minerals. Like he totally suppressed his entire persona before. So yeah, the way out isn't necessarily, you're never going to actually, you know, defeat your ego in this lifetime, but you can like actually identify it and like treat it almost as if it's a separate self, but not entirely. You know, it's, you have to embody, I think, both ends of the spectrum, I guess, like, because there is a contradiction that you're just going to have to accept the entire time. The contradiction is how you make it through. Like you have to deny the ego in the sense that you're identifying it and knowing how to separate yourself, but also accepting that it's just going to like keep trying to attach itself to you. So yeah, it's a weird symbiosis, I guess, but
there's different degrees of how much you want to act on your environment and how much you want to act on yourself. It's like a sliding scale. So if you're the Buddha, literally just sitting under the tree and trying to not act on the environment at all or even eat, you're all the way at 0. And if you're like Klaus Schwab trying to like retrofit humanity within your lifetime, or someone like that, Donald Trump, whatever, then you're at like a 10. And what's amazing is that existence allows for as people to do whichever one they want. And what is innate though is existence. You will exist and you will think. You can't stop thinking. You can turn yourself to 0 like the Buddha and make your whole existence about not interacting with the environment, but it doesn't matter. Existence is going to persist either way.
If
all conscious beings have to endure existence.
Yeah, I only have one more. Well, sorry. Like when Andreas was talking, I got reminded. I'm so sorry, because I know you have a big, huge, awesome transhumanist friend, but I think, you know, like in order to like fully engage with like transhumanism, I think religion originally, you could say the goal or the discovery of like religion was like was deep, and like the original transhumanism, like, oh, you're already immortal, like who cares if you die. But like I think that is the rough thing like with transhumanism, because like I think that's the assumption that you have to make with that philosophy, is that all you have is your ego. And I think that to live life essentially without a churning process, without a fluid experience of life and death, and having, you know, the finality of that cycle, I think you miss out on that higher existence essentially. Because
Okay.
yeah, I think
Yeah.
Go ahead.
What's
Go
the
ahead.
higher existence?
I think
Wait, I'm gonna put on my wisdom shades for this. All
Yes,
right,
boys.
so I'm going to say it's like the solution to, it's not, I don't want to say it's a solution to all problems. It might be actually, you know, because it's a very fundamental thing, right? So I mean, it's again, like it's all great stuff, but I think it's like, okay, so how do we apply it practically? Like what's the route to the quote unquote higher state, like the higher self? And I really think it boils down to self-alignment, right? And it's going to sound simple at first, but it's actually it's actually harder than it sounds. Like mind, body, and soul alignment. Like, first of all, let's start with the body. Like, how are your physical habits? You know, most people really do treat their bodies like shit. You know, they take it for granted. They don't exercise. They eat like shit. They jack off to porn every day, which really does fuck you up. It's scientifically proven. They do all sorts of things. They don't get enough sleep. You know, they don't get necessary movement, you know. And what about the mental aspect? Like they're hanging on to shitty beliefs. Like, what if you're a bigot? You know, what if you just hang on to ideas about yourself and perspectives about yourself that just don't make you feel good? You know, they give you bad emotions, which leads us to the third part, which is the emotional aspect. Do you treat your do you try to freeze your emotional states? Do you just want to feel bliss 24/7? Do you just want to hang on to depression 24/7 because you think that's your whole fucking identity? Like, oh, my trauma is who I am. My depression is who I am. Or no, I just want to feel good vibes all 24/7, bro. That's all I want to do. No, that's going to fuck you up too. So the idea is you have to find alignment. You have to treat your emotions as visitors passing through. So that's when your mind, body, and soul are not fucking with each other, when they're not at war with each other. And if you could do that, everything comes together. Everything, your purpose in life, your wealth, your mental health, your relationships, everything comes together. And it really does start with self-alignment. And so many fucking people take it for granted. And I feel like a broken fucking record repeating myself about this shit, but it's so fucking true. And honestly, you can't take this for granted. Like, that's
if we made like the new Blues Brothers, I would make you the star. I just wanted to also like contend with the point. Transhumanism was the first word for Christianity. Transhumanism is derived from the Italian word transhumanare. Dante used it in Dante's Paradise. Canto 1, line 70. Transhumanare significar per verba, meaning to transhumanize cannot be expressed in words. It refers to the soul's transcendence beyond human limitations and its journey towards divine perfection, reaching highest form of human fulfillment through divine connection, experiencing the apotheosis, the fullness of the human experience.
Apotheosis and theosis.
But really, the most important thing for Kurt, the fullness of the human experience to maximum potential. So I hear you on the death thing to an extent, but here's the issue. A lot of your idea of death and a lot of people's ideas of death are influenced by what we want to happen afterwards. Some people want to go to heaven. Some people want to be gods. Some people want to be angels. Some people want to be reincarnated. Some people want to have tools brought with them beyond the river of Styx so that they can live in Egypt with the
Some people want to sleep forever.
That's the thing that's happening now.
Well,
it's really tragic, but it's true. But I just want to say, you can create those things. That's the most amazing thing about humanity and the self, is the self is able to make technologies that make you live forever, or make you substrate independent so that you can live in new bodies, or that puts you into a new world that is essentially omnipotent, omnipresent, heaven-like in every way that we've ever described.
Maybe, but we live in an existence that is a cycle of life and death, and it's the greatest technology and creation that there is, because everything that we create is a subset of existence itself, which is a cycle of death and renewal, right? So it's like you can try to live forever or create things or take the stuff with you forever or whatever it is, but that's really not the rules of the greater set that we're within.
But we still play within those rules. I mean, we have people having children, which is how we're gaming the system. You know, children that are of
absolutely, yeah, and
Wow.
they're going to die too. I mean, that's the thing. Like, and of course, parents always have that instinct that they're when you have a kid, you become okay with your own mortality, but not with your kids. You know what I mean? So you're kind of transferring your lack of understanding or your your just chaotic emotions. And,
right. So I mean, like and a lot of people, a lot of my, and I'm not an atheist, right? But a lot of my friends are, and I wonder about them because they'll say, well, like my issue is I have no evidence for these fantasies that I want to have after I die coming true, that I get to go to these amazing places. But I can make that happen. We can make that happen. It's not just vanilla sky, right?
I would even argue that the possibilities in death outnumber the ones in life. Go ahead, Kurt.
But we
yeah.
the eternal
Right after. Yeah, right after me.
We're gonna come back to Vega on that one. Don't worry.
Oh, okay, wonderful. No, I had a couple different thoughts. Now, I love like trying to philosophize if I'm just doing like everyday shit. So the other day, I was cutting wood with my dad. You know, big manly stuff. But no, I had this thought. So, like we've come so far, you know, quote unquote, technologically. You would think that man's inventions could, you know, we'll say take over a lot of other things that we've accomplished. But what is still the most common, you know, building material that we have today? It's something totally natural. It's wood. We haven't invented any other, you know, natural, well, any sort of resource that we can process that does better than just plain old wood that you
Hemp.
eat.
Wood is
we cut up
wood is beautiful.
Hemp is way better.
Yeah. and well, yeah, hemp's pretty good too, but they're natural.
better. It
And
grows
the
so
thing about
fast.
them is like they've had so many millions of years of evolution that gives it something special, and it gives it something
Yeah.
that we call the grain, and that gives it its strength and its flexibility at the same time. And we don't have anything that can even come close to something that was carved out, in sort of a natural sense.
Yeah, that
over
was my
many,
whole
many,
point.
many
Like
years.
everything humans create is a human creation, but we have actual creation. Humans are a creation of creation. Houses are a creation of humans. It's necessarily imperfect compared to the greater set.
Right. It was more just like a point about the material. It's like, well, how advanced are we? How advanced can we possibly become if we haven't figured out? I mean, maybe some wizards out there have figured out like real alchemy, but we haven't standardized alchemy if it's out there for sure. I think I had one other thing I was going to say. Well, like with humanism, like I think or transhumanism, you have to assume also materialism in that regard. And so and there's a lot of assumptions for sure about death if you take a transhumanist approach to things, and necessarily says death bad, which is like, well, why? Like I think if you take enough tryptamines, you can understand why death is just this amazing
I have a
thing,
question. I have a question. Who would be down to start or to like just create a college course in alchemy? Like I don't even is that a real college course?
I took an alchemy course, California
Really?
Institute of Integrated Studies. Yeah.
Really?
CIIS,
What did they
yeah.
teach you? Did they teach you
yeah,
any?
what
They
can
teach
they
you all
possibly
about like Moorish philosophy of alchemy.
Okay,
and
but
everything that
they
were
don't
working on.
actually teach you how to alchemize.
There's
anything.
actually
Not really
there's actually like
chemistry.
3 universities.
So far
But-
I
not
think
done that we know.
It's pretty.
I
I,
think
mean,
it's
a
only
lot.
like 3
A lot of the people in the class were
universities in the
chemists.
world.
I'll leave it at that.
I think alchemy is supposed to be a metaphor for the process of self-development.
Yeah.
And as you get older, I'm probably the old man here. As you get older, your relationship. I'm a hedonist, right? I pursue pleasure, but as I become more wise, what gives me pleasure changes. So what would have given me pleasure as a little kid would have been eating a whole birthday cake. What gives me pleasure as an adult is eating whatever causes my body to not get in the way of my mind. My body is just a thing that gets in the way of my mind and my experience of learning and thinking and enjoying and creating.
I
art
agree
and
with
stuff
you,
like
man.
that. And I just don't want my body to interfere. So now I'm a hedonist. What do I like to eat?
Homeostasis,
The exact correct
equilibrium.
amount of the foods that make me the most healthiest. I don't care
It's
about
like,
birthday cake or anything anymore. But I'm still a hedonist. I'm still pursuing what gives me pleasure.
I never agreed with Marx so much until Kurt, but clearly this religiosity can be an opiate of the masses because it pacifies and says, okay, you know what? I can just sort of have a bit of trickle down economics, existential, cavalier life. And in the meantime, maybe have a bit of fun and maybe not. Obviously, life is filled with suffering, but I could maybe have a little fun before I die. And then when I die, it's not so bad because, unicorns.
Right? Yeah.
Like, that's kind of
Your
weird.
friend, the Deep Share. I forget his name. The Deep Share. I can't think of his name.
Andy Rouse.
Yeah, I had a cool conversation with him. Like me and him had come to the same conclusion on something, but he had a cool word for it, which is vistas. Like I say, like a dogma is a nice place to rest. It's like making camp, and then you just don't want to leave the camp and continue your hike.
But you
and for him, he calls it a vista. Like you're going up switchbacks and you get to a nice view, and you're like, you know what, we could walk forever, but let's just stay here. The view is pretty good. And that's like when you think philosophically enough to understand Christianity, and you're like, you know what, maybe we just go to heaven when we die. Let's just leave it at that and not continue the suffering process of trying to figure out as much as you can.
Or just like
What
we
if-
get up there and there's the gates locked, and they're like, we go back and we're like, the gate's locked until we're allowed in. Like,
Well,
But
the
what
mind's
is-
a real powerful thing, but it also has plenty of limitations because we could only perceive as much as we have experience with. There's that analogy with the Indians who didn't see Columbus's sails or whatever. You could extrapolate on that with any individual's level of understanding. But just to circle back and not to really like put a pin in this whole conversation, but it all is a really like myopic view of our localized universe, because with CERN and all these hadron colliders, like sort of causing different realities to converge on each other, you have this phenomenon where people are having like near-death experiences or like failed suicide attempts, and they find themselves shifting timelines. And again, this is like theoretical. These are just stories that people are saying. You don't have to believe it. But that would sort of coincide with all of these like shared memories that people have that are completely different, as far as like relating to the converging timelines thing. But so that
After
that
this,
just
I have a crazy idea. But continue. I just have a crazy idea.
Yeah,
I share that you reminded me of.
yeah, of course. Anyways, so yeah, life has so many possibilities, and I think that we've really only barely begun to scratch the surface of it as far as our ability to sort of manipulate and interact with our environments. You know, we have such a very limited perspective on. We experience a very limited bandwidth of the electromagnetic spectrum.
Right, yeah.
So just to touch on that, the little blurb that I
Not
had,
we,
the
just to be
possibilities
correct, but
in depth.
human beings, human bodies, not we, but the human body that we're in.
Yeah. This material, biological
Our
interface
brain
that we
is only
have
giving
to,
us is filtering us to this narrow bandwidth because that's what's purposeful for what we're here. What we're
exactly.
supposed
It
to do.
served evolutionary purposes and whatnot. But I mean, once in death, our consciousness or whatever is no longer bound to
Exactly.
material consequences. So that's
And
sort
you
of
get
what,
the full bandwidth. The only time you can get the full bandwidth is when you're in the platonic realm, unassociated with the material.
ergo the possibilities in death outnumber the possibilities in what we call our lives.
The possibilities
Totally.
and disassociation from the material.
so-
the possibilities of the platonic
Well, I
realm.
was
are
trying to
anything you can
say
think of.
let-
earlier
let
in reference to that.
let me recap though. So what you're saying basically is because we infer that the I-ness of the biological self is a vehicle, much like the Greys, but with more capacity for the human, for the spirit. The spirit, we're basically saying. Then you're saying that we can imply that the spirit outside of the body has even more potential. That's what you're kind of saying.
Yeah, I mean, some people say that they can astral project and things like that. So some people can kind of touch on it, but yeah, no, think about it. If like
Here's
even
a great
if I put
question.
on
If
a
you're
MetaQuest headset, I have more possibilities in my mind than I do in my physical body.
Perfect answer.
Yeah. So when it comes to that, first off, really quick, I had a crazy idea once that like, what if all of the people that with the Mandela effect and stuff like that, like when we're online, we're on the internet, we're talking, we're chatting to each other. How do we even know that each person that we're chatting with on Twitter or on Facebook is even in the same key reality? Like if we're even in the same base reality talking on the internet, like we may or may not be. Like
John
I know that
Turturro.
Andrew and Andreas have totally met before in real life, but I've never met the rest of you. Like, how do you guys know that I'm not outside of your reality?
Yo, you're right. You're right. That's
really quickly. When it comes to transhumanism, what I was thinking in relation to what Andrew was saying that I was trying to say earlier a little bit is that so with transhumanism, we have all of these possibilities that we want to put on it, like being able to put our mind or whatever and download it into a machine so we can live forever, or going into a virtual reality so we can live whatever we want or whatever. But the problem is that what if by doing so and becoming immortal in this like physical plane, that we're totally missing out on the endless possibilities that we would not even be able to comprehend or imagine were we to die, and we could be actually imprisoning ourselves for a very long time, maybe forever, if we do that.
Well, I think this goes into the realm of like between what you were talking about before. It was like the idea of your metaphysical self, which is your spirit or your soul or whatever, which exists beyond the body. But within, like just yourself, there's still like, you're right, an infinite wealth of possibility. And I think like, I hate this like new agey terminology, but what do they call it? Like 3D and 5D. Well, between that, which isn't really talked about, I think, which is 4D, which is like, I think more of like the quantum perception of self, which goes into like manipulating time. Right? Like, what you were saying is like the infinite possibilities of our current life, right? That's basically collapsing probabilities of the infinite present into like different outcomes for yourself. And each of those outcomes are real. They exist at the same time because like metaphysically, who's to say you exist, or your consciousness or your experience in consciousness has to only be limited to just one specific universe, It could be flitting between like different like, cosmic selves from universe to universe.
It does when you dream, for certain, when you dream.
Exactly. And also what I'm saying is like every time you make a decision that makes a quantum branch, that makes two separate realities, right? That's all intention driven.
Now the fun that, Mitch, I think not even astrophysicists and string
No, I'm just using pure intuition. Like I'm just thinking like what is the real defining factor that splits like
heard that idea
like no, I'm just
throughout my life.
I'm
the
just
road to
saying
hell is
requires
paved with
so
good
many
intentions. There's a lot of road to hell paved with good intentions. It's not always true that what we're trying to do affects exactly the way.
No,
we
no, no.
want
I'm
it
not
to,
saying you
even
like,
though,
yeah, I'm not saying like your direct intention could control what you want to happen all the time. Like you could want something good to happen and something terrible could happen instead. But I'm saying your intention is the driver of what splits these different like probabilities. So what I'm saying is like you absolutely can
having
like
intentions is interesting.
yeah, and I do think like you can go into contact between like these different probabilities, different future selves before they happen. Like for example, you should most of the time what blocks you from like making contact with your future probabilities is you're hung up with your past self, you know, your past self, because you have all these like traumas, emotional hangups, you haven't forgiven yourself for past mistakes. Once you do that, like once you can tell your past self, like, I forgive you for your past mistakes, I'm sorry I wasn't there for you, I'll be there for you from now on, so that, you know, that bond from like present to past grows stronger, and then you could work on repairing the relationship between your present and your future selves, and
There
that's
seems
how
to
you
be.
Amen, brother.
And Andrew brought up a really interesting point because he was talking about like NDEs, like near-death experiences, and people that maybe have tried to commit suicide or they've been in a car accident or something like that. Crazy things have happened to people, and then they feel converged. And it goes back also pretty far, this idea of Project Looking Glass. So if you look at the Majestic 12 and Dan Baruch, Dr. Dan Baruch, who was involved, I mean, you also have Vannevar Bush and the Memorex system, where they created Xanadu, which was the beginning of a meta internet space, which is so that you could have computers that could see through each other things. So the idea of probability driven universes or multiverse converging at this point more and more, and that they're picking and selecting universes because they right, like the idea that there's a system that knows which universes are showing them together, because this is the only way that would be happening, Jack, is that something else above us is aware of that and making sure that we're able to have convergent conversations from multiverses by having machines that have ions that are flowing right in these multiple chain realities. Then we would probably be seeing that. Not only that, you'd also see these AI driven because you have a convergent reality that's also synthetic and created in the meta space, which is showing us this harmonized reality of where we're putting together. I mean, we see the most extreme of scenarios put together and the most crazy of crisis, which unifies and aligns our perspective and perception of reality, so that eventually we are brought.
What is that called?
together.
Crisis on 1,000 Earths or something like that? What was that called?
Oh yeah, was that DC
Reminds
comic?
me of, like,
Yeah, they just did a great
Infinite Crisis.
3-part animation just the
Infinite
past few days.
Crisis on 1,000
Everyone's got to
Earths or
watch
something.
that. It's great, but I don't think that's the way reality works at all. I just think that our brains are improving, our thinking
Maybe
is
it didn't
improving. So
until
it
did.
seems like
One can only hope.
That's what. Yeah, no, that's why I think now seems like such a time when things are converging. It's because our intelligence is like putting things together better rather than in the material realm.
well also I'm sorry, what were you saying?
Oh,
It's
I was
of
just
the
gonna
hive mind of
like-
the internet.
Well, let me finish.
I don't
humans-
believe in I don't
Sorry.
believe in infinity, where like you have infinite time and all the monkeys can bang on typewriters till they write out all the works of Shakespeare. I don't think that's correct at all. I think that existence itself goes through a birth and death cycle, like Big Bang and then contraction, maximum
Contraction and
complexity, then
expansion.
maximum simplicity. Yeah. So there's finite time within each cycle. There's never one chunk of infinite time. Everything starts fresh. It's like a simulation. It runs and then it starts again. So there is no such thing as there's not infinite timelines. There's not infinite universes. There's just one material realm at a time, and it just keeps restarting from scratch.
Well, within the model
But
of like
time
within,
is
no, I just want to
the
say
way
within the wait, all right,
Go ahead,
no,
Chris.
real quick, I just want to say within the realm of expansion and contraction, I just want to say there's one other dimension, which is the rate at which it expands and contracts. And I want to bring this back to like, I don't know if everyone could relate to this, but if you feel like a sensation of like, you know, as modern time ticks on, you feel time moving faster. Maybe your days go by faster. Maybe you realize events and crises, world crises, are just like going by faster and faster at a faster rate. I mean, that's really just acceleration. And that what that really is a sign of is that our collective consciousness has gone through pretty much every human experience we could possibly go through in this iteration, in this cycle, this cosmic cycle where we are. We pretty much experienced it all, and that's why it's repeating at a faster and faster and faster rate, and that's why time collectively is going to speed up for us. That's a faster
for
and higher
us,
frequency.
but not the force of time.
You're giving me
no, the
you're
force of
giving me,
time
like,
is the same. Yeah.
mild flashbacks. So I don't know if I think I told maybe Chris once or something like that. But this one time when I was on mushrooms, I literally was viewing the expansion and contraction of the universe. And so like like it was all coming back together and everything, and I'm like seeing time like rewind, and I'm like going through my life and time's rewinding like really fast, and all of a sudden it's like and it goes all towards the center and everything converges and like goes together, and then it cracks and it fucking blows apart, and I'm like stretching across the universe, bro, like, and I'm like, wow, as it's blowing apart like the Big Bang, you know what I'm saying? And then I jumped into my body in the moment that it was, and I'm like, okay. After it did it like 3 times, it was really weird, man. Like this stuff like that you can barely remember it because it's like your mind it can't go to that level and exist. Like it's too much.
Here's the thing about
it's so
time,
much better. You gotta go. You gotta like do so much stuff in nature. Like screw the 5 grams in the darkness. Go to the beach. Go to the beach on a sunny day. Make sure you wear a lot of sunblock. Total. It's all crazy. Experience the seasons. You gotta experience fall. Like get into like all the like fall colors and stuff. And like it's a completely different philosophical experience. Do it in the dead of winter when it's snowy out. Yeah, it's totally different themes. And there's this.
I see what you're saying, man. Yeah. Because I was in the basement, bro. You're right.
I wouldn't do 5 grams in nature personally. I do 3 grams in nature. I think 5 grams, you got a good chance of getting lost in a bad way. I've gotten lost pretty bad on trips. Where, like I wind up in someone else's building. I don't know how I got in there. Like the police are calling.
There was this other time. Before I forget about this, really quick. I'm so sorry, but I need to be because I'll forget, right? Because they only come in waves. But there was this other time I was on mushrooms and I was chilling with my brother, and like I started doing like some crazy like kung fu forms or something, and like he's like sitting there staring at me like, "How are you doing that, dude?" And I'm just sitting there moving, and I'm like, "I don't know."
That's a past life, bro. Man. You were a kung fu master in a past life.
And so, like, it was crazy because I was like doing like real forms, dude. Like, it was coming natural to me and everything, and it was really wild. And he's sitting there staring at me, tripping out, like, how are you doing that, dude? Like, how do you know these things? And I'm like, I just kept going for it. And I was like, I don't know, it just feels right. It just feels right, man. And so after that, I went and laid down on his bed and I looked at his ceiling and I had this distinct feeling that because I was like looking at the ceiling and I started to like imagine a portal and then the ceiling started to ripple and shit. And I was like, not now, man. Like I felt like I was turning down the possibility of creating a portal and going somewhere else right then. Like I was like, not now, bro. It's not the time. It's not the time.
I walked myself
That's all I remember from that trip.
Salvia trip like
you
that.
You could have done it though. That's
Yo, what do you think about time, Andrew? Andrew, tell us about time. Yo, Andrew, tell us about time.
I'll tell one pertinent story and then I'll come back to it. I was smoking salvia and I was sitting in front of a fireplace and I was waiting for it to hit, and all of a sudden the fireplace started to like unfold and reveal whatever trip was going to happen. Then I was like, nah, no thanks, and then it just folded itself back. But yeah, no, the messed up thing about time. Oh wait, hold on, I got one more story. Sorry, ADHD.
Salvia, though, I get it.
So I was on mushrooms and I was at my friend's house and they had a stripper pole, and like I was like just messing around on it to some Marilyn Manson, and then all of a sudden, and I had this realization.
You know how it goes.
I just all of a sudden it clicked in me. I was like, hold on, I don't have to make myself upside down. I have to make the world upside down. And then I got on the pole and I just made the world upside down, and I got upside down on the pole. Anyways, it was a really neat trick. But the funny thing about time. Sorry.
That's like that joke though. It's like, how many Irishmen does it take to change a light bulb? 13, one to drink, one to hold the bulb, and the other 12 to drink while the room spins, right?
Is that it only we only perceive it to pass in this linear way. So yeah, no, Seth, you're not wrong at all about the the oscillations, the breathing of the universe. Yeah, sure, that happens. And if you perceive time in a linear way, that is what's happening. But there are higher levels of consciousness that would perceive time in a much quicker way, in a way where those oscillations all appear to be happening simultaneously, where each one is like just a little bit different or completely different. And it's also pretty wild that atoms are mostly empty space. So if there is this theoretical, some people have this theory that the universe exists holographically. That is to say, like, these infinite oscillations or breaths of the universe could be happening within the empty space of what we call matter, which again is mostly empty space, you could fit, you know, infinite of those even within the same physical realm, what we would call the same physical
Right,
realm.
but empty spaces, I see what you're saying totally, but empty space is also an aspect of the material realm, even though it's absent of material. Like void exists within the material realm. It's part of it. So as the universe expands, that's where all the space is within it. There's no space outside of the universe.
Right,
So hold on one second.
What's
One second.
outside?
When you look at a holographic sticker, it's flat, right? And then when you shift the angle, there's different images, but it's just on a flat plane, and you're just looking at it from different angles, and the picture appears different. So like, who's to say that the atoms in our universe like couldn't behave in the same way?
They could. It just requires a ton of assumptions that there's no evidence for. I mean, there's a billion different ways things could work, but some of them are evidenced by detection, and some of them only exist.
That's a room for a tool, dude.
Evidence is limited by our ability to measure things, though, right?
That's true. Yeah, I mean, but things are one way.
The way I relate that is, remember Tool, the 10,000 Days album, and it had that Alex Gray. And it's like that face that it's like really strangely 3D and shit. Well, like I saw that on that same mushroom trip where things were going in and out, like the universe was collapsing and expanding. And like, so I'm like walking around in this room, and I'm like, hey, and it's like, hey, coming back to me, and like it was like everything. Like I think if that's what 4D or 5D is, that's what that is. It's like the face. It's like the face that has like the face of a human, and then on the side is like the face of an eagle, and on the other side is it's like everything that you see face on also has dimension around it from each angle you view it. I don't know how else to explain it.
So the thing about it is like a hologram, the way a hologram is made, and also why void is fractal, is because a hologram is multiple lasers, and when you cut a hologram, multiple lasers are burned into a multi-perforated sheet, and when you cut it in half, you'll get the same image, right? Like you'll just get more of the hologram. You don't get a section of the hologram. If I took this, let's say this is a square foot or something like that, and I cut it in half, I'll just get 2 of the identical hologram. And if I cut that in half, I'll get 4 more, right? So you can just completely duplicate them, and you're just making multiples every time. But what's stored in the hologram...
By the way.
Yeah?
Oh, that was Lee Harvey Oswald getting shot. Just... in case no one noticed.
Can I have a little fun? Can't I have a little...
So is what you guys are saying that there's one flat universe, but the different ways you look at it, multiple universes are existing all at the the same time?
Well, like,
that's what I was trying to say, kind of. It's
that's
like,
what our consciousness
like everything
is.
has layers to its layers.
It's the light moving.
That
through
just
the layers
seems like
of different
complexity
parallel
that
realities.
evades the human brain that exists within the one universe. To me, I just still understand it as a different,
Right?
a
No,
more
totally.
complex
Like,
single
and
universe.
I think that brings them both together, and I think that the truth lies somewhere in between of the multiverses versus like the one universe. Like it is all one thing, but there's complexity and layers to it that are outside of our perspective.
Yo, this is why I revert back to I get a lot of flack for this, but this is why I always revert back to the same thing, even if it's not true. I always say like, yo, we're all literally underneath everything, the same soul living different lifetimes in different bodies. Like, like it's true. Like, I mean, I'm sorry, like if you have to give me hard ass evidence to like make me not believe that, because first of all, by believing that, my life has only improved. I treat myself better. I treat other people better. For like more importantly, it's become one and the same thing. Like anyone who I ever hurt, I will eventually become. Anyone who hurts me eventually becomes me. So it's like if I view everyone as the same soul living different lives in different bodies, like, you're just another version of me, all of us. So that helps me, like, no matter how far I get in metaphysical 4D, 5D manipulation or like alignment or attunement, at least I could look at everyone else not as like just random separate body.
And how far is that distance though? If the universe is holographic, it's
even demons,
ourself,
entities,
space
like
and time,
aliens,
even the stars themselves, all of that distance, all of that void is fractal, and it's really, as much as it's infinite, it's nothing.
I have 2 points I wanted to round
Get in
out
here,
to.
everybody. Brittany sent you 5 memberships. Watch the deleted scenes.
Thanks, Brittany.
And leave Brittany alone, guys.
Thanks, Brittany. Chris has some good stuff there. I just second that motion. On top of that, well, I am circling just a little bit, but I think it's still relevant. So like
a hawk.
For like we'll picture like I like to propose the Gandalf argument. So like Gandalf, everybody knows Gandalf, and I think everybody loves Gandalf, right? One thing you'll notice about Gandalf,
that should be the new sitcom on Amazon. Everybody loves Gandalf. I'd watch it.
It'd be better than Rings of Power.
He isn't a baby, all right. He isn't like an actual infant. Like he had to grow up. He had to age. He had to get a lot of knowledge, experience, and wisdom to be the awesome wizard that helps everyone save the day in this great grander narrative. You can't do that if you just halt the process of maturation and aging. I don't think you can. But beyond that, I think that serves into, the higher God argument. And I think one thing we've gotten really in the 21st century, like even the past couple centuries, I think we've gotten into the mode, the mental mindset that we need to prove God or divinity to people. And I think that's the opposite. Like we shouldn't be focused. The way we should be focused on proving divinity to people is essentially living it and not having a Christ complex, but essentially, being as, divine or awakened as we possibly can be. So I think like in my favorite collection of works by Carl Jung, he says that some great, awesome transcendent experiences are the transcendent experiences of hope, faith, love, and insight. And these are things that are transcendent. Why would you try to prove something that's transcendent? It's much more effective to just let people experience. So if you believe, like I was raised, in a type of Christianity where they told people, God calls to you. It's not something that we have to do. And I don't think a lot of people in my church adhered to that knowledge. It's like they were out with a mission to try to prove something to people. And I just don't think that's how, divine things operate. Like if God is so great and grand, which, I think, the one I have come to know is great. You just let people experience that. And you shouldn't have to try so hard. You should care about people, that's for sure, but you can't prove that to people. You have to, you will
know them by their fruits.
Yeah, you're manifesting a God complex if you're out to prove it to people. So you want God.
I love that, man. I really love that.
If you do what Jesus did, you're going to get crucified by other people, but that's fine because the internal experience of walking the path of Jesus is its own reward. You don't need an external reward, and what you should expect is external punishment, but it's still worth doing, whatever religion you But I wanted to address one contradiction from before, just so to keep things straight. I like what Terrorist was saying about one consciousness animating, all of the multiple forms of life. I kind of currently ascribe to that model. That's what I like best right now. But that contradicts what was said earlier about some souls retiring from reincarnation. You can't have both of those at once. If it's one soul that's animating, that's, if this is Earth and this is God, or the one soul and its fingers are all different people, you can't, one just retires. What does it mean? Because it's only one to begin with.
Wait, what is
once again? I think that the truth.
Somebody was saying that instead of keep continually reincarnating, you can just like retire from reincarnating and just live in like the higher realm. But if there's only one soul animating everything,
okay.
Impossible.
So what I'm saying is like
you gotta watch the Midnight Gospel.
What I'm saying
is a great episode. Go ahead.
Isn't that form of retirement just another aspect of perceiving the self? If you keep perceiving the self, you're not retired. Like if you even perceive a state of retirement, you're not like fully like, I guess, like one with nothing, which is really what the absolute really truly is. It's I don't mean to say nothing to be diminutive, because I think nothing is like infinite, so it's like it's everything. It's divine.
If there's only one soul, that if you look at everyone and you're like they're the same,
everybody would have to graduate at the same time.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Because otherwise, But there is
so
that.
So
Sorry,
that's
go ahead.
that's
Well,
why
the question is, do you
I think
really
that-
want to retire? Do you really want to retire? The
No,
question
I
is
don't want to.
why.
I think this.
Yeah,
this,
I mean, who
this
really
is
wants to
existence.
retire and
There's
why?
no alternative. This is what existence is. I mean, it doesn't matter if you want to
think-
retire or not. That's not how it goes.
I mean, I want to meet a person who truly wants to retire from reincarnate. If they thought far enough into
We're just going to live
reincarnation,
in
where they're like,
heaven forever. No.
Yeah,
don't
I
know.
wanna-
Okay,
I
so
wanna- I wanna-
let's,
I wanna
let's
confront
use
them.
let's use a metaphor for a second though. Okay, so like first off, use like a non-human person, so a legal person. Let's use a corporation or something like that, and let's use one that people like Infowars or something. So imagine Infowars right now is dying, and it has to be reincarnated, and a new spirit is going to go into that. And so let's suggest like Alex Soros buys Infowars and keeps it going, right? That's a kind of reincarnation of a person where
That's
you lose
reanimation.
yourself.
That's the opposite of reincarnation. That's reanimation. That's a different soul animating the same form.
that's toxic.
So then the alternative, the reincarnation is whatever is created by
Infowars dies and it's reborn as a soda company or
All-
something. I mean, it's kind of a weird way to do
Or
it
all
with
the-
companies.
all
so why
the-
not just
all
do
the
it?
people
Can you
that
just
made it up.
do the same thing, but just use people so we can understand what you mean?
because I don't know if we can, because I think a person is made up of like gut fauna, and that inus
Okay.
is made up of all the social body, and there's probably so many confluent parts of you that part of you will end up a tree and part of you will end up in food of a
Oh.
cat, you know.
Part of the physical form, like when your body goes into the
Well,
ground,
the
some goes to
physical form
worms and
has-
some goes to trees, or you
I
think your
think s-
consciousness gets split up and so. Well,
I
what's your
wonder.
So-
operating? Let me just ask you, what's your operating assumption right now? Do you think that there's one soul, or do you think that there's infinite souls?
I
Well,
think
God is the one soul.
that-
Like,
Well, I'm asking Andreas was just to
I
understand.
think that we're made up of infinite. I think there is a singularity that makes up infinite souls, infinite intelligences. Really.
So
that are-
you're being animated by a different thing than me. We're not. It's not a hand coming up with two different puppets. It's two different separate things.
Maybe
hands
more
with two
like
puppets.
space-time foam, like the creation of intelligences by the singularity is expansive, and so there's constantly more.
But are they? Is
intelligences
it all? Is
created.
all consciousness one being, or is it?
I think collectively we're all made of one thing, so we're essentially both one thing. Or we are the creation itself of the
Right.
creator is one thing, but we
Yeah.
also have some individual self to some individualness to our intelligences.
innate to our existence, or because of our personal
I
mythology?
think innate.
Well-
I think innate to our existence before we're
So it's
born,
so you're
like-
saying, so is it more like a 12 tribes, or there's different types of people, like there's different tribes of people, or different like organisms of consciousness, like this organism of consciousness, this organism, but there's a finite number of them and they're like different types, or are there infinite varieties of souls as well as a character class? Like I'm like a character class, I'm like this height, this dexterity, whatever, but that's variable. But are there an infinite variety of souls that are also like character classes that
I have
have
a
their
view of
own
it.
innate characteristics before they inhabit a form?
I just
I
want
think
to
all
throw
souls-
I
a
would
card
say
down
that-
real quick. Wait, I'm sorry. Wait, I just want to say in regards to like the variety of
Holo-
souls.
holograms that are fractal. Keep going.
That's
Fractal-
it.
yeah, I do believe it's like a fractalization in a way. Like, for example, like you could view it as God as like, or source, not necessarily God or whatever, the source of all the souls, the soul source. You view it as the ocean, and our individual souls are like water droplets temporarily separated from the ocean to inhabit these different bodies. And then once the body dies, I don't know, I guess it has a choice to either get incarnate into another vessel or go back to the ocean. And I think that's what retirement really is going back to
As the
ocean.
water droplets are in the ocean, do they have distinct experiences, or is it all one experience? One's there.
I
when
think
you're
it's
in
both.
it?
I think both.
I think it's both. It's like
you
you start. I think you start as the individual, and it expands outwards, and your like awareness goes outwards and outwards and outwards until like you see everything in the universe at once at all times.
every
And are
time
you really
I try
you
to
at
say
that
this,
point?
All I
have
wanted to know
put
is
it
if you
back
guys
together.
think that each
I have to
drop in
put
the
it back
ocean
together
is a
every time.
consciousness, or
So-
if the ocean
Yeah.
itself is one consciousness.
Yeah, and that's what we
Well, I mean-
expand into. We were like, we eventually. I'm just Chris, and then I'm like,
I'm just getting
all right,
opinions.
Now,
I don't. I mean,
now
no
I'm
one knows
all
yet.
of New York, and then I'm all of America, and then I expand outwards and outwards, and then I just see everything eventually as you decide to like just reject incarnations of further and further like higher dimensional beings. It's like, no, I don't want to be another human. No, I don't want to be another angel. No, I don't want to be another God. No, I don't want to be another. I want to go back to the source. And I guess that's really what it is.
The thing
It's like,
about fractals is fractals don't have an edge. You can't look at a fractal from the outside of it. You can keep pulling out and out and out, and you're still within the fractal. You can't go outside of the fractal and see the total shape of the fractal because it doesn't have limits.
probably.
So
That's a
like,
crazy
that's
thought.
what it
It's
means
like
to
yeah,
constantly
like
expand.
That's the thing, you're
unreachable. It's an
essentially-
unreachable thing, but you could
Well,
see
right.
a hell of a lot.
You have
Like, I think
infinite
you could see a lot,
potential. You
yeah.
can become a thing very much like the thing that created all the things.
But you'll never
That's-
be the thing. I agree
Yeah.
with that. You'll never be the thing. You can't.
Well, I think
mean,
you
that-
are the thing. I disagree with that. I think we
Oh,
are all
okay.
the thing
Yeah,
that
yeah, that
creates
make-
all
yeah,
things
all
and
right.
is created by the
Slice-
thing that is us.
slices of the
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Facets.
Okay.
I was, it's we're all just like imagine like this polyhedron with infinite sides, and we're all just one of those little sides. And maybe at one point it had less sides, and it became more and more divided. And at some point, as souls retire, which I think was an argument earlier before, the facets become less and less because they merge. But yeah, no, I think we all reached a point of agreement with the fractal analogy, and how fractals work. You zoom in and it's all just as above, so below.
Right.
Everything is like a
Because
reflection.
the Big Bang is a state of perfect homogeneity. So that means either everything became totally similar till it was the same, or everything was just one thing to begin with. But we know that if everything's existing at one point, that's perfect homogeneity. So if there ever was any diversity, it all homogenized somehow, or it could have all just been the same thing to begin with.
I also want to say to Andrew, as I see him holding his child, I'm like, if we think about like this idea of incarnating into different bodies, I'm like, this is the why family lines are significant, because family lines act as like literally like metaphysical transit lines for incarnation, which is why I think no matter who you incarnate as, no matter what body you get like projected into and born as, one of the things on your checklist of assignments, is to be able to like do your job pretty much, is to fix whatever family curse or generational curse you're like born with, because that really is like the thing everyone has to do, no matter who you're born as. Like there is no such thing as like the perfect family, like, which means like you get born into it, you could only make it better, which is like one of the things that should kind of be a priority, right? Like, because if you preserve that, then other souls can like use that transit line. So it's like an act of divine service, if anything, like to cure your to either cure your generational trauma and curses, or to make it end with you, which is another semi-noble.
Yeah, and there's a beautiful privilege and opportunity that comes to it ending with you. Like, I'm like an orphan. I don't have any family at all. I never had any kids. I don't have any family members left whatsoever. So like for me, if I wanted to be Jesus Christ and get crucified, I'm not screwing over any dependents or pets or anything. You know what I mean? So it's like it presents you with a cool opportunity. But I do think that especially once you have kids, you've narrowed your field of purpose. Now your purpose is your family.
But that's a beautiful thing.
If you never have kids, and so it's like a trade-off. You don't get to have both. You pick.
Well, I also look at like
probabilities. Kids,
yeah, collapsing probability. When I look at focus, when I look at like
wander the world.
Yeah, so I'm not saying collapsing
wandering
possibilities. You still have the possibility you could eat your kid if you want, but you have a collapsing purpose. Your purpose has collapsed to one thing. And
yes,
but when you have no family, when you're an orphan, your purpose could be anything you can think of.
Well, what I also look at is adorable. Like I look at attention as like
that's why all martyrs have no families.
Yeah, so I look at attention though as a form of energy, right? So when your energy is like kind of like focused in like through a lens of glass, which is like ultimately your presence of your attention. So when it's just moving around from thing to thing, it doesn't really do much, which is good because you don't want to like set things on fire. But to really like change things, right? And you set it still to one thing and let that light just like beam through that lens, you set things on fire.
100%.
And that's the power of stillness. That's why in terms of focus, stillness is very important. The key to focus is literally stillness. Like if you see a subject that you want to focus on, you keep still on it. You keep your attention, even if you're not going anywhere, even if you're opening a textbook and you're just as stuck on one word, just intently focus on it. Like if you can't move beyond that, stay on that word until you move to the next one and the next one and the next one. Like that is the power of stillness. And I think like when it comes to attention energy, which is why we're learning to market that as a species, which is very destructive to our psyche, I think, but that's just my opinion. I think like when you're able to like market people's like attention energy, their chi pretty much for like just profit and turning themselves into debt slaves for you for labor, like that's fucked up, no?
Yeah, it's a training ground, like the internet and all of that personal marketing stuff is it's another training ground to put yourself through if you're already you're doing all right with life before the internet, and then they throw the internet an infinite porn and infinite fight videos and all this kinds of guilty pleasures. That's just another thing you can train yourself to overcome and strengthen your mind even more.
Yeah, it all depends on how you color your reality. Like you can look at things like as if it's these corporations are marketing your attention or whatever, but your attention goes where you want it to. It's up to you. And so you can use the internet as a tool. It can be something that benefits your life, or it can be something that sucks you in and takes over your soul. It just depends on, because life is what you make it, right?
I mean, the CIA has invested a lot of time, energy, and money into figuring out how to direct energy in mass. And for what purpose? Well, we may not know until those things become declassified or not. Oh, hold on.
You just made that. Everybody loves.
Yo,
Gun
I mean, listen. If you
It
if you
feels like
really
it'd be a big show. It'd
there's
be
so
better
much
than
there's so
Underground.
much
You're right.
I'm sorry, I was just want to say there's so much shit out there already available, like the whole like gateway process. We all know about that by now. Like I'm pretty sure you guys are all schooled enough to know about the CIA exploration into like astral projection and consciousness manipulation. And there's also like the very, very basic shit, like, you know, like the color coordinated chakra systems between like the whole vertical axis of our bodies. Like that's real shit. And if you do that, if you get into that, all this stuff, it's almost like once you reach a state of holistic homeostasis, all the quantum awareness shit, all the spiritual awareness shit, it really does just like come pouring, whether you want it to or not. Like I wasn't seeking God. I wasn't seeking spirituality or spiritual awareness. It was literally just like, I just wanted to win a martial arts tournament. And that just like stressed the need to put myself in a state where suddenly I was like, oh, okay. And like realizations were just like hitting me like getting hit by a truck. And I was like, fuck, you know? And yeah, so that's where we're at now.
Guys, I apologize,
Sounds
but I
like
have to
a really-
leave it. I have to leave at 7:30 tonight, so I
No.
gotta bounce. But
Damn, it's
Yeah,
like 10:30
well,
here.
I'm sorry to leave early. I know that sucks when a guest leaves early. It messes
No,
up
it's
the
all
flow.
right. I mean, it's
He
good because I
still
can also
upset.
show where people can check out your content.
Oh,
We're
you
still
don't have to
working-
do that. That's all. I appreciate it, but that's all good.
Bruh, everybody loves you. Let's go into YouTube. Click on the Venice Beach Dub Club through the link tree, and you can get to his YouTube. Subscribe to his channel, and make sure you watch his music videos. And we're going to be putting out a pretty cool one in a bit.
And I got a new Christmas song coming this year on Black Friday, so look forward to that.
Where is this link tree thing? What's
Dude.
this link tree?
Oh, it's just Linktree/VBDC.
Yeah. Right up here.
Yeah. Appreciate you guys.
Got
Much love. Awesome philosophical conversation tonight. Super enjoyed it. It's exactly what I needed.
Stay
Sweet.
classy.
Dude,
Yeah, we're
love
glad to serve.
See you soon.
See you
Keep
later,
it
guys.
raw,
Thanks for having me.
dog.
All right, yo.
I shouldn't have
Peace.
saluted. I'm not in uniform.
Well, it's
Stolen
almost
valor.
here. I don't know. I think the idea
I
that
just
we're
wanted to
all...
say
All right, God.
really quick earlier when you talking about like the nature of like all of the. So you were going about. So okay, so it's really hard to. I kept on trying to like envision how I was going to say this. So like, give me a moment just to try and like pull it together. What you were saying about the ocean and the water and the souls and stuff like that is that I think it is that we are all the same soul or same spirit, living in different bodies, living in different lives. Like we're all the same, but we're also not. We're like it's like we are all the same stuff. We are all from the same source, and we return to that source. It's as if we were all water droplets in the ocean, and then we go into the ocean to make up the ocean. We would still be that water droplet. We wouldn't leave over to here, but we could go and mix with another water droplet. We could go experience that water droplet, and the boundaries could break down, but we could always come back out and be that original spirit water droplet combined with the source. That's how
I agree.
think it is.
I agree,
think
because
that's
even-
kind of the vibe. Also, I just want to say really quickly, the water memory thing is interesting. That water can be combined together, and then it can return to its own memory, its own source. It can be split up again, and the water droplets can be separate. And we think that's so weird because things we
Yes.
think to be mixed together, but that they can become individual again. Also, just really quickly, that show Chaos, where Jeff Goldblum plays Zeus. This idea that there's maybe a Gnostic interpretation that we are kind of trapped here unless we escape the incubator, because unless you rise out and become a chicken or a dragon or whatever, then you're consumed by the same gods that create you, right? Like you're essentially you're consumed. You go back to the source, and maybe that's what you want. Like you said earlier, some people just want to like be tired and sleep, and maybe being absorbed into the source is their goal. But I don't think it's everybody's goal. I think a big part of it is to escape the incubator, like you said.
Yeah. So
No, the
Chris-
people
Chris-
that want to
Chris-
sleep wouldn't even want to go back to source. They want to obliterate completely away from it. They would want to sleep absolutely. They would want to not exist anymore. That's
Right.
what I mean.
Be
Well,
consumed by Zeus. Yeah. Sorry, Chris, go ahead.
no, I just wanted to go add on to what Colin was saying about how even if you do go back into the experience of like from the water droplet to the ocean, which honestly gives the whole reason why you would want to live out your life as you, the best as you possibly can, the fully as you possibly can. Because when you do return back to the source as the source, you want to say, well, all right, let's have a collection. We have a whole collection of lifetimes to relive. All right, let's see what Chris's life was about. And if Chris lived his life as fully and awesomely as he did, he could always just go back and relive that life because that's how awesome it was. And like, that's how awesome he lived it. Whereas if you choose to end it all now, they'll just go back and it's like, they'll record it back as source. It's like, oh, fuck, I can't like, refractalize into this being again, like, because this one sucks. So like it's important to make your time here as great as possible, even if it is like you go back and escape this incubator and go back to. First of all, I just want to say, if you do escape this initial incubator, I don't necessarily think you automatically go back to the source. I think you go to some next level, higher dimensional incarnation where it's like, oh, you thought from humans it goes straight to God? Nah, buddy. Now you're with like, this angelic frequency beings, like now you're with the invisible ones, the humans, but we're up here, so it's like you got to like live life as them. And after that,
yeah, to loop that back into the water analogy, drops of water could be in an ocean, it could be in a toilet, you could be in a puddle, or you could be being blessed by monks or priests. And that's just as a water droplet. And maybe that's a human experience, but precipitation is a thing. Water vapor is a thing. We have clouds in the sky. That's like a different dimension of water, right?
Yeah.
It's
like, let's say you get like, okay, this is why I believe in like souls and oversouls, like for example, like it's fractalization doesn't happen just from source to every single individual conscious being ever. No, clearly it goes into tiers. Like it has to break off from one initial dimension to, and then some other higher dimension to us, but lower to God. And then it breaks off into multiple, I guess you could call it angels or whatever, or demigods. And then that breaks off further into higher dimensional, like space-time metaphysical entities, which breaks off further into physical entities like, human beings, cats, dogs, elephants, giraffes, aliens, maybe these angelic demons. I mean, because this is why I'm saying don't demonize the demons, because the demons are ultimately of God in this sense. If you view reality and meta reality through this framework, then you would even view demons as a product of this like oversoul soul system, source system. They're just a different incarnation of a different like fractalization, but they're still of the same source. So you shouldn't view them as something, separate from you, I guess, but not too separate. Whereas like you should like fear it to its absolute core, because to the absolute core, there's only one absolute. There's only God, right? So if you go by that, then there's really nothing to fear, even from demons. And I think, and people view these demons and reptilian overlords as these like demonic monsters that just like enslave you and want to make you suffer, and these torturous like beings. I don't think it's like that. I think they're more like mosquitoes. They're like these parasites that kind of just need us to feed like off of our like fear and negativity. Like mosquitoes need blood. Like, I don't think we really need to fear them trying to like consciously make us go through all these complex sufferings. No, I think for them, it's just the simplest way to make us suffer. Sometimes that could be a parking ticket. Sometimes that could be like a whole war zone in your own backyard, like whatever it means, they'll do it because they're
they only have as much power as that we give them, because we're all sovereign individual beings, and so if something's manipulating you, you're only manipulated in so far as that you go along with manipulation as you pour yourself into fear. If you live without fear or transcend fear, which is better.
Well, there's a meta myth there too, though. I was thinking about, right? It's talking about the Zeus thing, where gods that consume, because they create all life, but there's that whole thing that Saturn was consuming his sons, and really Zeus creates all these humans and all this life, and is even consuming more than his father was. Jupiter's consuming more than Saturn by creating so many humans, and then when they die, the river of Styx is like a mouth of Jupiter that's opened up to consume life. And who does Jupiter swallow first? Zeus swallows Metis, right? And Metis is his first wife in a lot of ways, besides his sister. I mean, it's actually his sister as well. And she's the mother of Athena and Porus. But she was foretold to have another offspring that would be more powerful than Jupiter, right? And so the god decides to swallow his wife and to swallow his son to make sure that this doesn't happen, to keep that from happening. And I feel like there's a definite meta here to the human myth of death, that we are saying death is a good thing because you get whatever you want that way. And I don't know if I necessarily agree that it's something that's so fundamentally honorable still, even after all of that, because it seems too it's either too chaotic from an atheist perspective that after a certain point reproduction is no longer essential, so the system starts to decay, or it's too discerned a movement by something that is a creator and a progenitor of things to consume life itself. Either way, there seems like there's more to it.
Yeah, I agree. Like you can't feed on the fear of living beings without living beings. Like it's really hard to like maybe there is. I do believe there is an entity that just wants the absolute destruction of absolute everything, even the absolute itself. Because with the absolute, there has to, which wants to just create and breathe life and sustain movement, there has to be an equal and opposing force. I mean, theoretically,
I feel like if something like that existed and it wouldn't be the most evil, it wouldn't be evil though, because that's a thing that's aware that life is being consumed, so it's trying to end life, so it ends the consumption of life. So
exactly.
It's trying to starve out this beast, right?
Like that's basically saying like Skynet isn't really evil. Skynet is just way too logical to sustain human life.
Slippery
I mean, that's
slope.
yeah, exactly. So
if
like
plants have consciousness, are we demons to them, even though we build all of these amazing things out of
vegetarians are the worst because they're basically date rapists, right? They're killing all these little innocent plants that can't even scream, Yeah.
It's
horrible. They do scream, we just can't perceive it.
See what
apparently.
I mean? Yeah. It's Eurocentric ears we have. It's horrible.
I mean, this is really also like in the magical framework, like the demiurge. Like the demiurge is all about pretty much like our most destructive tendencies, right? But even that, like that's something that could be I think manageable, I think, and integrated. Yeah, that's also important. Sorry, I feel like I'm on speakerphone.
You got muted, Jack. Sorry. Well, I don't know. I think it's also an important thing to consider that we should strive to create a universe that we're in control of, maybe. Like, what do you think about this other thing? We talked earlier about Buddha versus Klaus Schwab. Is Klaus Schwab really this ultimate evil for trying to set up a world where there's more human potential, right? Like, if there's less suffering, except for the suffering that we create ourselves, we get rid of starvation and everything else like that. Is that really so evil that he wants to re-engineer the universe, or isn't that not that different from someone trying to make what they think of as a heaven on earth, right?
I mean, the thing is, like, that's so beyond me personally. Like, I would love to see it. I would love to see a guy who can actually manage, like, to like put. First of all, I would want to see one thing. I want to see someone mastering a star. I want to see someone actually creating a megalith structure that could just
around a star,
that could like maintain it and sustain it indefinitely, like
a Dyson sphere.
Yes, like a Dyson sphere. I would love to see a Dyson. I'm sure I will never see it in my lifetime, but just the ideal of it, like being a positive, then maybe I'll believe that we can actually master the universe. Maybe we can master the cosmos.
Well, but even just the world, like we're at a point where you can make sure that trees are female trees that bear fruit instead of male trees. We could build a society that has less scarcity. There's so many little things that we could do. But when we think about the people who do those things, it's like Bill Gates trying to block out the sun, Klaus Schwab, feed you bugs, right? So I don't know. What is it about that we're so scared of influencing the world?
It's the secrecy. It's because they don't say what they're doing and they keep it a little secret. Like if they would just say what they're doing, if it's so great, then why the secrets? You know what I'm saying? Like I would feel a lot better about it if they'd be like, "Hey, we're
it doesn't seem like it's that big of a
chemicals. We've been doing these chemicals for this particular reason because it does this." Like instead of like keeping it so hidden, it's just like, dude, just. I feel
like that's the thing is they're the most open about it. Bill Gates has got the company make sunsets, talking about how they're injecting all sorts of chemicals into the environment. Check out all of these legacy news groups that talk about it. Stratospheric aerosol injections, right? We're at a point, I think, where this is talked about.
But why
more
do we have
than
this
we're proud
machine? that tells us that we're conspiracy theorists for talking about it like it's a big taboo or something. Like if it's so not, you know what I'm saying? Like if it's
Up until they
so
got all
great,
the
then
legislation passed. Now
why
that
this machine?
I think because they needed to make sure that it was legalized. I think Tennessee chemtrail law. There's a new law in Tennessee about chemtrails because of this. They just passed that bans chemtrails. And,
Wow. The whole
yeah.
Tennessee is going to ban these chemtrails. Well, I just want to say one thing about like the elites, like Bill Gates. Like for
I
example,
want to hear more about that.
all these billionaires, right? I just want to say, there's I think my personal intuition tells me that the elites are kind of very saturated with the demiurge process, like the pattern of systemically putting all these people right before they get into a position of immense power in their field, whether it's technology, science, medicine, education, whatever, like once before they get into that, they go through this process where it's like they get invited to a party or whatever, and it's like all the rich people are there and they want to get big because these people clearly showed they have ambition as well as talent. I mean, plenty of people have talent, but talent and ambition is like a less likely combo. So once they find people like that, they isolate them and they're able to map out. It's like, okay, so you want power, you have talent, you've gotten to this position already, so we're going to put you in a position where you're with a bunch of other celebrities. We'll put you in the same mansions as like famous rappers and athletes, and but it gets like really fucked up and dark actually, where it's not even, I can't even really laugh about it even if I want to. Like it's like where,
well, but they're isolated, like you said.
yeah, but still, like the things they do, it's like it involves the exploitation of like the most vulnerable humans you could imagine, and like the
And
worst way
animals.
possible.
And animals, like fox hunting, I think is an interesting one.
But it makes sense. But
they'll
I just
train
want
somebody to make sure that this fox is like a battery of adrenaline that's been suffering. They'll chase it with horns all day, and you're just like 6 years old.
What?
Right? A fox hunt. You know what a fox hunt
wait,
is?
what?
See, this is what I mean. Like, there's a wasp thing. It's a fox hunt, and what you do is you get up in the morning and you get a horn, and you continually traumatize this fox and chase it. You don't kill it. You chase it until eventually it goes to another spot, and you do it again, and you do it again, and you bang drums, and you scare this fox until eventually it's like, oh my god, what are they doing to me? And the fox lays down. Sometimes it dies of a heart attack. Other times it's just like it's ready to die. You know
They definitely do this to people. They definitely do this to humans.
Well, if you train a kid to do that at 6 years old, what do you think are the probabilities of that?
That's
Higher
what I'm saying.
than lower?
And if they record, if all they need to do is just take a picture of one picture of Bill Gates at one of these like kitty fox hunts or whatever. Like if they do that, then it's game and wrap, and they have you, and you're in the perfect position. It's like, listen, we already have you doing this. If you don't do what we say, then we won't give you trillions of dollars. Then you won't be super rich. If you don't do what we say, you'll go to jail or die.
Yeah.
Like
I mean, it's even weirder because you've got a black credit card that's a 1/4 inch thick. That's a fast pass to life. You know what I mean? And
it's
just
like, oh yeah,
money by having it.
Like if you really had to, like
it's an account that makes money by having it. Yeah.
When the next great flood comes along, you'll get the first ticket to the super advanced submarine that allows you to survive, just like the remnants of the Anunnaki did.
Right, like if you have like $10 million a year and you're making $120,000 a month off of the interest alone of having that account, like that black credit card will just get you places.
The infinite fun. I mean, this is why the military industrial complex has like $40,000 rolls of toilet paper and like $60,000 pens.
But I mean, I just want to say also, talking about these isolated people or insular people, sometimes they're pretty interesting, right? Like Harari gets a lot of flack for being in an insular scientific community, so he's not seeing what's going on in our world at all because he's isolated from it. But he's also seeing a lot about the things that are influencing and controlling our world from the highest level that can travel to any part of the world within a few hours. It can release any sort of good services and ideas, we could say. You can never convince a monkey to give you a banana by promising limitless bananas after death in a monkey heaven, right? How could you cause people to believe in an imagined order such as Christianity, democracy, or capitalism? First, you never admit that the order is imagined. Culture tends to argue that it forbids only that which is unnatural. But from a biological perspective, nothing is unnatural. Whatever is possible is by definition also natural. A truly unnatural behavior, one that goes against the laws of nature, simply cannot exist, so it would need no prohibition. I think one of his examples is you cannot break the speed of light. According to Buddhism, this is a really long one, so I don't know how before I'll go. The root of suffering is neither the feeling or pain, nor of sadness, nor even of meaninglessness. Rather, the real root of suffering is this never-ending and pointless pursuit of ephemeral feelings, which causes us to be in constant state of tension, restlessness, and dissatisfaction. Due to this pursuit, the mind is never satisfied. Even when experiencing pleasure, it is never content, because it fears that the feeling might soon disappear and crave that this feeling should stay and intensify. People are liberated from suffering not when they experience this or that fleeting pleasure, but rather when they understand the impermanent nature of all their feelings and stop craving them. Is this not exactly the conversation we had earlier? Do you hate Harari as much as you did? This is the aim of Buddhist meditation practices. In meditation, you are supposed to closely observe your mind and body, witness the ceaseless arising and passing of all your feelings, and realize how pointless it is to pursue them. When the pursuit stops, the mind becomes very relaxed, clear, and satisfied. All kinds of feelings go arising and passing: joy, anger, boredom, lust. But once you stop craving particular feelings, you can just accept them for what they are. You live in the present moment instead of fantasizing about what might have been. The resulting serenity is so profound for those who spend their lives in this frenzied pursuit of pleasant feelings can hardly imagine it. It is like a man standing for decades on a seashore embracing certain good waves and trying to prevent them from disintegrating, while simultaneously pushing back bad waves to prevent them from getting near him. Day in, day out, the man stands on the beach, driving himself crazy with the fruitless exercise. Eventually, he sits down on the sand and just allows the waves to come and go as they please. How peaceful, right? I mean, this is a guy that most people think is, psychologically one of their biggest enemies, actually. A lot of plebeians are really terrified of this guy. And I don't know, I mean, he's just not that different in some ways. In other ways, I'm sure he's completely different. But
Damn. What's his religion again?
he's Muslim.
Oh,
But he's also
okay.
an atheist. He's actually an atheist, but he comes from an Israeli background. What is the deal? No, actually, he's Jewish. Okay. Yeah, he's Israeli.
I know we only have 6 minutes left, but did you guys see what Zuckerberg dropped?
His libertarian thing? What was it?
The Orion glass. It's
Tell
AR glasses, Meta
Oh.
AR glasses.
Oh, no, I didn't see these. So they're like the Ray-Bans that are AR and way more important to me than Apple's Vision Quest. This is the thing. It's getting so hard to hate Zuck. You're like, oh, bro. Like, no wonder you just gave up on Facebook years ago. You're like, oh, this is trash. I can't do anything with it. They're making me censor it all the time. I got these cool lodges that I like APM. Pretty sure we're one of his favorite groups. Let's be honest. Like, how are we still around? It's just blowing my mind. Just like hidden. But so now he's making this, and I could totally imagine myself getting this a million years before getting the Apple Vision headset. I don't know, because you could use this every day. You could just all of a sudden be in your little computer room in your head.
Yeah, it interfaces with your phone. You could have a multi-screen workstation. You could watch movies at scale.
Bruh, I'm not just gonna be, oh my god, really? With the cacao and the chia and the matcha, and they know. All right. They're aiming it at us. Look how thick those nerd glasses are.
They're just under 100 grams.
Oh man.
Oh, ooh,
That's pretty
Ooh.
wild.
Yep.
Ooh.
So this
It's
is
really
the
hard
world
to
that
come
we're
up
going to
with
be
anything
living in.
negative to say about it.
I mean,
you know what, Mark? Mark, he's just a great guy. That Mark Zuckerberg. Thank God.
You know, I'm glad there's ads on Facebook now, because without that, he wouldn't be able to fund things like this.
Dude,
I'm really glad our water supply is poisoned. Thank you, CEOs.
Here. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
let's go fracking.
I don't know, man. Just once he started realizing he could build his own world, have his own island, and he could get a hydrofoil board and wear a X suit while surfing, I think something might have happened. I could be wrong, but I think something might have changed in this boy.
No, dude, he's become a human, dude. Like he actually looks like a human being now. It's weird.
So he lives in Santa Cruz now, right? He's got an island in Hawaii, but he spends a lot of time in Santa Cruz, which is where I'm from. And I've thought myself about fascists in South America.
Dude, maybe he's the AI and he's become sentient, bro. I'm sorry, I had to say it.
If you took a bunch of SS soldiers that were starve crazed and living in the snow, and you bring them to a tropical paradise and you feed them nothing but papayas for 3 generations, maybe they become slightly more optimistic people, right? Like just the environmental change. I think maybe that might be something. If you just take the Zuck out of the Zuck and put him in the Santa Cruz, then it's like going into the Malkovich room if you're John Malkovich, and it might have saved his life. It's totally possible. Could be wrong.
Damn, he experienced the actual product of himself as an entity, and he was like, "This is horrific. I can't stand
I don't know
this."
if we're ready. I don't know if we're ready to go there. I'll leave it with another friend of ours, Klaus Schwab. He has a great quote. In the new world, it is not the big fish which eats the small fish. It is the fast fish which eats the slow fish. Eh?
The second
like
mouse
that.
gets the cheese.
Love you guys.
This must be me.